Captain Jason Holmes grips the armrests of his command chair as the Starship Odyssey drops out of hyperspace above Akamar Prime. The alien world looms large on the view screen, its swirling atmosphere a tapestry of greens and purples unlike anything on Earth. He stands straightening his uniform, keenly aware that humanity's first contact with the Akamarians may forever alter the course of both species. "Away, team, prepare for planetfall," he orders, striding towards the transporter room. His mind races with diplomatic strategies, but nothing could prepare him for the reality awaiting on the surface. The away team materializes on a crystalline platform, immediately surrounded by towering Akamarian guards. Their scales shimmer with an iridescent glow, razor-sharp claws gripping advanced energy weapons. Holmes raises his hands slowly, signaling his team to remain calm. "We come in peace, sir," he announces, his voice steady despite the tension. The guards remain silent, their vertical pupils fixed on the human visitors. A low hum fills the air as a sleek, anti-gravity vehicle approaches. The guards part, revealing a figure that commands instant attention. Queen Mira, the Akamarian monarch, stands at an imposing 7 feet tall. Her reptilian features are regal, luminescent blue eyes scrutinizing the humans with cold intelligence. "Captain Holmes," she speaks, her voice a mix of hisses and clicks translated by their universal communicators. "Welcome to Akamar Prime. Follow me." The human delegation is escorted through vast corridors of the Crystal Palace, alien architecture defying Earth's laws of physics. Holmes observes everything, noting the advanced technology that surrounds them. The Akamarians are clearly centuries ahead of humanity in scientific development. Queen Mira leads them to a grand chamber, holographic displays flickering with complex data. She turns to face the humans, her expression grave. "Captain, we face extinction," she states bluntly. "Our population is plummeting due to widespread infertility. Our greatest minds have failed to find a solution." Holmes nods, understanding the gravity of the situation. "We're prepared to offer any assistance we can, Your Majesty. Earth has experience with..." "Human DNA," Mira interrupts, "is uniquely compatible with our own. Our scientists believe it holds the key to creating viable Akamarian human hybrids." The implications hit Holmes like a physical blow. He struggles to maintain his composure as Mira continues. "In exchange for our most advanced technology, Earth will provide breeding stock. It is the only way to save our species." Holmes's mind reels. The offer of advanced tech is tempting, but the cost... "Your Majesty, surely there are alternative solutions we can explore. Perhaps our medical expertise..." Mira's tail lashes in frustration. "We have considered all alternatives, Captain. This is our only hope." Before Holmes can respond, alarms blare throughout the palace. Mira's luminescent eyes widen as she receives an urgent telepathic report. She turns to Holmes, fear evident in her usually stoic features. "An unknown pathogen is spreading through our population, accelerating the fertility crisis. We are out of time." Holmes sees an opportunity. "Allow us to help, Your Majesty. Earth has faced similar crises. Give us a chance to find a solution that doesn't require breeding." Mira hesitates, clearly torn between desperation and distrust. Finally, she nods. "You have one planetary rotation, Captain. If you fail, the breeding program will be implemented by force." As guards escort them to a research facility, Holmes's mind races. He must find a way to solve the Akamarian crisis, protect humanity's interests, and prevent an interspecies conflict. The fate of 2 worlds now rests on his shoulders, and the clock is ticking. Captain Holmes took a deep breath, his mind racing with the weight of Queen Mira's ultimatum. He turned to face his team, their expressions a mix of shock and perseverance. "We have one rotation to find a solution," he said, his voice steady despite the tension. "Let's make every second count." As the guards escorted them to the research facility, Holmes approached Queen Mira. "Your Majesty, we'll need full access to your medical facilities and research data if we're to have any chance of success." Mira's luminescent eyes narrowed, her tail twitching with indecision. After a moment, she nodded. "Very well, Captain, but you will be under constant supervision." The human delegation entered the Akamarian Central Research Institute, a sprawling complex of crystalline structures housing advanced medical equipment beyond Earth's wildest dreams. Dr. Elara, the lead Akamarian geneticist, greeted them with a series of clicks and hisses translated by their communicators. "Welcome, humans. I will brief you on our current situation," she said, leading them to a holographic display room. As Dr. Elara explained the intricacies of the fertility crisis and the mysterious pathogen, Holmes studied the data intently. His eyes darted between charts and graphs, searching for patterns. Suddenly, he noticed something. "Dr. Elara, when did you implement your new water purification system?" he asked, pointing to a specific data point. The Akamarian scientist blinked, her vertical pupils contracting. "Approximately 3 cycles ago. Why do you ask?" Holmes leaned in, excitement building. "Because that's when your fertility rates began to decline sharply. There might be a connection." Queen Mira, who had been observing silently, stepped forward. "Are you suggesting our own technology is responsible for this crisis?" "It's just a theory, Your Majesty," Holmes replied cautiously, "but it's worth investigating." Dr. Elara's scales rippled with skepticism. "Our water purification system is beyond reproach, Captain. It's the most advanced in the galaxy." "Then you should have no objection to us examining it," Holmes countered, his gaze steady. Queen Mira considered for a moment, then nodded. "Proceed, Captain. But remember, time is of the essence." As Holmes and his team began analyzing water samples from various regions of Akamar Prime, tensions aboard the Odyssey reached a boiling point. News of the potential breeding program had spread like wildfire through the crew. In her quarters, First Officer Sarah Bennett paced restlessly, her mind working overtime. She knew they needed an alternative solution, one that didn't involve forced breeding. An idea began to form. "Computer, begin recording," she said. "Proposal for Akamarian Human Cultural Exchange Program." Back on the planet's surface, Holmes and Dr. Elara's investigation led them to a remote water treatment facility. As they entered the control room, Holmes felt a chill run down his spine. Something wasn't right. "Dr. Elara, look at this," he said, pointing to a readout. "There's an unknown compound in the purification system." Before the Akamarian scientists could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Security footage flickered to life on nearby screens, showing a group of armed Akamarians forcing their way inside. "Extremists," Dr. Elara hissed. "They oppose any cooperation with humans." Holmes's hand instinctively went to his phaser. "We need to secure these samples and data. It might be our only chance to solve this crisis." As they worked frantically to download the information and collect samples, the sound of energy weapons echoed through the corridors. The extremists were getting closer. Suddenly, the main door to the control room burst open. Queen Mira stood there, her personal guard flanking her, energy weapons at the ready. "Your Majesty," Holmes exclaimed, "the extremists are being dealt with," Mira finished, her tail lashing with controlled fury. "But we have more pressing concerns." No sooner had she spoken than a group of extremists rounded the corner, weapons raised. In that instant, Holmes saw a side of Queen Mira he hadn't expected. The Akamarian monarch moved with lightning speed, her claws a blur as she disarmed the nearest attacker. Holmes sprang into action, using his Starfleet combat training to incapacitate 2 more extremists. For a moment, their eyes met across the chaotic room. A spark of mutual respect, and something more to pass between them, but there was no time to dwell on it. As the last extremist fell, Holmes turned to Dr. Elara. "We need to finish analyzing these samples. The compound we found, it could be the key to everything." Hours passed in a blur of intense work. Finally, Dr. Elara looked up from her instruments, her scales paling. "Captain Holmes," she said, her voice trembling, "you were right. This synthetic compound is interfering with our reproductive processes, but its structure, it's not natural. Someone deliberately introduced it into our water supply." The implications hung heavy in the air. Queen Mira's luminescent eyes widened with shock and anger. "Who would do this, Hatter?" she demanded. "And why?" Holmes shook his head. "We don't have all the answers yet, Your Majesty, but this is the breakthrough we needed. With this information, We can start working on a cure. As news of the attack and the humans' efforts to help spread across Akamar Prime, public opinion began to shift. Akamarians who had been wary of the Earth delegation now spoke of cooperation and gratitude. Queen Mira, her usual stoic demeanor softened by the day's events, approached Holmes. "Captain, I believe we have much to discuss. Would you join me for a private dinner this evening?" Holmes nodded, acutely aware of the weight of the moment. "It would be my honor, Your Majesty." As they prepared for the dinner that might shape the future of both their species, Holmes couldn't help but feel a mix of anticipation and apprehension. The fertility crisis was far from solved, and the identity of those behind the sabotage remained a mystery. But for the first time since arriving on Akamar Prime, he felt a glimmer of hope. But for the first time since arriving on Akamar Prime, he felt a glimmer of optimism for the future of both their species. As the Akamarian sun dipped below the crystalline horizon, casting a kaleidoscope of colors across the alien sky, Holmes made his way to the secluded royal garden. Queen Mira awaited him, her scales shimmering in the fading light. The garden was a marvel of alien horticulture, with bioluminescent plants pulsing gently in the twilight. "Captain," Mira greeted him, her voice a mix of formality and something warmer. "I trust you find our accommodations satisfactory?" Holmes nodded, taking in the exotic surroundings. "More than satisfactory, Your Majesty. Your world continues to amaze me." They seated themselves at a low table crafted from what appeared to be living crystal. Akamarian servants glided forward, presenting an array of dishes that defied Earth's culinary norms. Holmes eyed a pulsating, iridescent gel with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. As they began to eat, the conversation turned to the day's discoveries. Holmes chewed thoughtfully on a morsel that tasted like a cross between spiced mango and smoked salmon before speaking. "Your Majesty, I have a theory about the synthetic compound we found in your water supply," he said, his eyes meeting Mira's luminescent gaze. "I believe it may be the result of industrial pollution from a neighboring star system." Mira's tail twitched, her vertical pupils contracting. "Impossible. We monitor all nearby systems closely. Such pollution would not go unnoticed." "Perhaps," Holmes countered, "but what if the source was deliberately concealed?" Their debate intensified, each presenting arguments and counter-arguments. As they spoke, Holmes couldn't help but notice the way Mira's scales rippled with each passionate statement, the subtle changes in her bioluminescence, reflecting her emotions. Suddenly, Mira tilted her head, studying Holmes with unmistakable curiosity. "Captain, I find myself intrigued by human mating practices. How do your people form romantic bonds?" Holmes felt heat rise to his cheeks, caught off guard by the abrupt change in topic. "Well, Your Majesty, it varies greatly among individuals and cultures. Generally, it involves a period of courtship, where two people spend time together, learning about each other's interests, values, and personalities." Mira leaned forward, her eyes fixed on Holmes. "Fascinating. And physical affection? How does that factor into human relationships?" Before Holmes could formulate a response, his communicator chirped urgently. Dr. Alara's voice crackled through, tense with excitement. "Captain Queen Mira, you need to see this immediately. The synthetic compound, it's not just affecting fertility. It's altering Akamarian genetic structure at a fundamental level." Holmes and Mira exchanged a look of shock. The implications were staggering. "We're on our way," Holmes replied, rising from the table. Mira's tail lashed with perseverance. "No, Captain, we must investigate the source of this pollution ourselves. My fastest scout ship stands ready." Within the hour, Holmes found himself aboard a sleek Akamarian vessel, streaking through the void towards the neighboring star system. The ship's interior was a marvel of biotechnology, pulsing with life. Mira worked the controls with fluid grace, her claws dancing over living interfaces. As they traveled, Holmes contacted the Odyssey. "First Officer Bennett, continue work on the cultural exchange proposal. It may prove crucial in the days ahead." "Aye, Captain," Bennett's voice replied, tinged with concern. "Be careful out there." The confined space of the scout ship forced Holmes and Mira into close proximity. As they analyzed data and formulated strategies, Holmes became acutely aware of Mira's presence. Her alien scent, reminiscent of ozone and exotic spices, filled his nostrils. Occasionally, her tail would brush against him, sending an electric thrill through his body. Mira, for her part, seemed fascinated by human physicality. She initiated innocent touches, a claw gently grazing his arm, her scales briefly pressed against his hand as they both reached for the same control panel. Each contact left Holmes's skin tingling. As they approached the neighboring system, a massive industrial complex came into view, sprawling across an asteroid belt. The facility bore no identifying marks or flags, its purpose clearly meant to remain hidden. "By the first egg," Mira hissed, her luminescent eyes widening. "How could this have escaped our notice?" Before Holmes could respond, a powerful force seized their ship. "Tractor beam," he shouted, fingers flying over the controls in a futile attempt to break free. As their vessel was inexorably drawn towards the asteroid, Holmes and Mira prepared for confrontation. The captain checked his energy pistol, while Mira revealed a hidden weapon within her royal garments, a compact energy projector that hummed with barely held back power. Their eyes met in a moment of silent communication. Despite their differences, despite the tensions between their species, in this moment they were united. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The airlock hissed open, revealing a group of masked figures in unmarked uniforms. Energy weapons trained on Holmes and Mira, they were escorted deeper into the facility. Sterile corridors gave way to vast chambers filled with advanced genetic research equipment and chemical production lines on an industrial scale. Finally, they were brought before the apparent leader of the operation. The figure stood shrouded in shadow, tall and imposing. As it stepped into the light, Holmes felt his breath catch in his throat. Mira let out a low hiss of shock. The being before them defied easy categorization. Its form was vaguely Acamarian, but distorted, hybridized with something Holmes couldn't identify. Serpentine eyes regarded them coldly, set in a face that blended reptilian and mammalian features in a way that nature never intended. "Welcome, Captain Holmes, Queen Mira," the hybrid spoke, its voice a discordant mix of hisses and guttural tones. "I've been expecting you." Holmes's mind raced, trying to process the implications of what he was seeing. This was no simple industrial accident or act of corporate malfeasance. They had stumbled upon something far more sinister, a conspiracy that threatened not just the Acamarians, but potentially all sentient life in the known galaxy. The hybrid leader's lips curled into a cold smile, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. "You've been quite persistent in your investigation, Captain, but I'm afraid you've only scratched the surface of what's really happening here." Mira's tail lashed aggressively, her scales flushing with anger. "What have you done to my people?" she demanded. The hybrid chuckled, a sound that sent chills down Holmes's spine. "Done? My dear Queen, I've set them on the path to evolution. The Acamarian fertility crisis is merely the first phase of a grand design, one that will reshape the genetic destiny of countless species across the stars." Holmes felt the weight of the revelation settle over him. They had come seeking answers about a planetary crisis, only to uncover a plot of unimaginable scope. As he glanced at Mira, seeing the mix of horror and grit in her luminescent eyes, he knew their journey was a long way to go. The hybrid leader gestured expansively, indicating the vast facility around them. "Welcome," it said, its voice dripping with malevolent pride, "to the future of galactic evolution." Evolution. The hybrid's words hung in the air, heavy with implications that Holmes and Mira could scarcely comprehend. Before either could respond, masked guards seized them, their grip unyielding. Holmes met Mira's eyes, seeing his own willpower reflected in her luminescent gaze. They were marched through sterile corridors, the hybrid leader's cold laughter echoing behind them. The detention area loomed ahead, a stark contrast to the facility's advanced laboratories. Holmes and Mira were unceremoniously shoved into a cell, the energy field crackling to life behind them. "I am Zix," the hybrid announced, his mismatched eyes gleaming with malevolent pride. leader of the genetic ascendancy. Your presence here is most fortuitous. Over the next hours, Zix revealed his grand design. The Genetic Ascendancy, a shadowy organization spanning multiple star systems, sought to create a superior hybrid race by combining traits from countless species. The Acamarian fertility crisis was merely the first step in a galaxy-wide plan of genetic manipulation. Guards soon arrived, escorting Holmes and Mira to a series of invasive examinations. Scientists of various alien races collected samples, conducted scans, and subjected them to a battery of tests. Throughout the ordeal, Holmes and Mira remained close, their shared captivity forging a deeper bond between them. As they endured another round of genetic sampling, Holmes leaned close to Mira, his breath warm against her scales. "We need to find a way out of here," he whispered, his lips barely moving. Mira's tail twitched in agreement. "The ventilation system," she murmured back. "It might be our best chance." Their quiet strategizing was interrupted as Zix entered the laboratory, his hybridized features twisting into a cruel smile. "Fascinating," he hissed, studying the data from their examinations. "Your species show remarkable potential for compatibility." With a gesture, Zix ordered the guards to escort Holmes and Mira to a new location. They were led through winding corridors to a vast chamber unlike anything they had seen before. As the doors slid open, they gasped in unison. A lush, tropical paradise stretched before them, complete with towering trees, vibrant flora, and the soothing sound of flowing water. The temperature was perfect, the air rich with the scent of exotic blooms. "Welcome to your new home," Zix announced, his voice dripping with false benevolence. "This habitat has been specially designed to simulate optimal breeding conditions for various species. You will be our newest subjects in the study of interspecies compatibility." With that, Holmes and Mira were pushed inside, the doors sealing behind them. They found themselves alone in this artificial Eden, acutely aware of the watching eyes hidden behind the facade of nature. As they explored their new surroundings, Holmes and Mira found themselves drawn closer together. The stress of their captivity, combined with the intimate setting, began to break down the remaining barriers between them. "Your scales," Holmes murmured, his fingers hovering just above Mira's arm. "They're beautiful in this light." Mira's luminescent eyes met his, a mix of vulnerability and curiosity in their depths. "Your skin?" she responded, her claws gently grazing his hand. "It's so different, fascinating." Their touches grew bolder, exploratory. Holmes marveled at the smooth coolness of Mira's scales, while she found herself captivated by the warmth of his human skin. As the artificial sun began to set, casting the habitat in a golden glow, their embraces became more intimate. Hidden cameras whirred, capturing every moment of their growing closeness. In a control room, Zix watched with clinical interest, making notes on their interactions. Days passed in a blur of stolen moments and tender discoveries. Holmes and Mira found solace in each other's arms, their physical intimacy matched by a deepening emotional connection. Yet always the weight of their captivity and the urgency of their situation pressed upon them. One night, as they lay entwined in a nest-like structure, Holmes heard the faint murmur of voices. Two guards, their words carrying through the habitat's environmental systems. "Extraction procedure scheduled for tomorrow," one voice said. "Zix wants their genetic material for the first generation of hybrids." Mira's tail twitched, indicating she had heard as well. Their eyes met in the dim light, a silent understanding passing between them. They needed to act, and soon. Using their combined knowledge of human and Acamarian physiology, they began to formulate a plan. Holmes's Starfleet training and Mira's royal education provided them with a unique set of skills. They started manipulating the habitat's environmental controls, preparing to create a distraction that would allow them to overpower the guards and escape. As they worked, their bond grew stronger. The shared adversity and the intimate nature of their surroundings had kindled something neither had expected, a deep, abiding connection that transcended their species' differences. Outside the asteroid facility, unbeknownst to the captives, the Odyssey approached under stealth mode. First Officer Sarah Bennett, her face set with purpose, prepared a small team for a covert insertion. As they neared their target, sensors detected unusual energy signatures, confirming their worst fears about the nature of the experiments taking place within. Inside the habitat, Holmes and Mira put their escape plan into motion. With a series of carefully timed adjustments to the environmental systems, they triggered a cascading failure. Alarms blared throughout the facility as temperature and humidity levels fluctuated wildly. In the ensuing chaos, they overpowered two guards who entered to investigate, acquiring their weapons. Now armed and free from their enclosure, Holmes and Mira began to make their way through the facility. Their goal, to stop Zix's plans and find a way off the asteroid. As they navigated the complex corridors, they encountered the results of Zix's earlier experiments. Hybrid creatures, some barely recognizable as sentient beings, filled containment units. The sight steeled their dedication to put an end to the genetic ascendancy's twisted ambitions. Rounding a corner, they found themselves in a vast control room. Holographic displays showed star charts and genetic sequences, revealing the full scope of Zix's plans. Holmes quickly began downloading the data, knowing it could be crucial in stopping the conspiracy. Suddenly, alarms changed pitch. Their escape had been discovered. Holmes and Mira shared a look, their newfound intimacy adding an extra layer of drive to their stance. As the sound of approaching guards echoed through the corridors, they readied their weapons, prepared to fight for their freedom and the future of their respective species. As the sound of approaching guards echoed through the corridors, they readied their weapons, prepared to fight for their freedom and the future of their respective worlds. Suddenly, the corridor behind them erupted in a burst of energy fire. Holmes and Mira spun around, weapons raised, only to see a group of figures in Starfleet tactical gear emerge from the smoke. "Captain Holmes," a familiar voice called out. First Officer Sarah Bennett stepped forward, her phaser still raised. "Are you all right, sir?" Relief washed over Holmes. "Bennett, your timing is impeccable." Mira hissed in surprise, her tail twitching with nervous energy. "How did you find us?" Bennett tapped a small device on her wrist. "Advanced tracking technology. We've been monitoring your life signs since we detected the Odyssey's transponder signal." The rescue team quickly secured the control room, allowing Holmes and Mira to complete the download of crucial information about the genetic ascendancy's plans. As the data transfer finished, alarms blared throughout the facility. "Time to go," Holmes said, pocketing the data chip. "We need to get this information back to Starfleet." The group moved swiftly through the complex, encountering fierce resistance from Zix's security forces. Hybrid creatures with mismatched limbs and enhanced abilities lunged at them from the shadows, while genetically modified soldiers fired salvos of energy blasts. Holmes and Mira found themselves fighting side by side, their recent intimate experiences translating into an almost telepathic coordination. As a serpentine hybrid with four arms charged at them, Mira ducked low, allowing Holmes to fire over her head, stunning the creature. In the next moment, Mira's tail whipped out, tripping an approaching soldier, giving Holmes the opening to disarm him. As they fought their way through a junction, Bennett called out, "Captain, sensors are picking up a large concentration of life signs ahead. It looks like some kind of laboratory." They burst into the lab, weapons at the ready. The room was filled with stasis pods, each containing a different hybrid creature suspended in a viscous fluid. At the center of the room, hunched over a control panel, was a familiar figure. "Dr. Ilara?" Mira gasped. The Akamarian scientist looked up, her eyes wide with fear and relief. "Queen Mira, Captain Holmes, thank the stars you're here." As Bennett's team secured the room, Holmes quickly freed Dr. Ilara from her restraints. She explained how Zix had captured her and forced her to assist in creating new hybrid species, using her expertise in Akamarian genetics. "We need to destroy this lab," Ilara said, her voice shaking. "The things they're creating here, they're abominations." Holmes nodded grimly. "We'll set charges on our way out, but first we need to get to the hangar bay." The group pressed on, fighting through waves of Zix's forces. As they approached the hangar, a massive explosion rocked the facility. The doors ahead of them buckled and flew open, revealing a towering figure silhouetted against the flames. Zix stepped forward, his hybridized form now fully visible in the harsh light. He was a monstrous amalgamation of dozens of species, with multiple limbs, eyes that glowed with an otherworldly intelligence, and skin that shifted and rippled with terrifying power. "I must commend you on your tenacity," Zix's voice boomed, a cacophony of different tones and frequencies. "But your interference ends here." Holmes, Mira, and Bennett moved as one, forming a protective line in front of the others. Zix attacked with lightning speed, his enhanced abilities making him a formidable opponent. Energy blasts from the team's weapons seemed to dissipate harmlessly against his morphing skin. As they fought, Zix revealed the true scope of his plans. "The genetic ascendancy has already established operations on dozens of worlds," he gloated, deflecting a phaser blast with a chitinous arm. "Soon our perfect hybrids will replace all existing species. The galaxy will be reborn in our image." The fight intensified, with Holmes, Mira, and Bennett working in concert to hold off Zix while the rest of the team secured their escape route. Despite their efforts, Zix seemed unstoppable, shrugging off attacks that would have incapacitated any normal being. In a moment of desperation, Mira's eyes began to glow with an intense, otherworldly light. She stepped forward, her scales shimmering with energy. "Enough!" she shouted, her voice carrying a power that Holmes had never heard before. A wave of psychic energy emanated from Mira, washing over Zix. The hybrid leader stumbled, his mismatched limbs twitching uncontrollably. "What? What is this?" he growled, struggling against the invisible force. "The true power of Acamarian royalty," Mira said through gritted teeth, maintaining her concentration. "Something your experiments could never replicate." With Zix momentarily incapacitated, Holmes seized the opportunity. "Everyone, to the ship, now!" The team scrambled aboard their escape vessel as Mira's power began to wane. As the ship's engines roared to life, Holmes contacted the Odyssey. "Target the asteroid's power core," he ordered. "Precision, strike only. We need to cripple this facility without destroying the entire rock." As they flew clear of the asteroid, the Odyssey's phasers lanced out, striking the facility's core with surgical precision. Explosions bloomed across the asteroid's surface as they made their escape. Safely aboard the Odyssey, Holmes, Mira, and Dr. Alara gathered in the ship's lab to analyze the stolen data. The information revealed a list of worlds targeted for the genetic ascendancy's next phase, including both Earth and Akamar Prime. It also pointed to the existence of a central hub for the ascendancy's operations, hidden in an uncharted sector of the galaxy. Queen Mira, her scales still shimmering faintly from the use of her powers, turned to Holmes. "Captain, in light of this threat, I've made a decision. The Akamarian people can no longer remain isolated. We must join forces with Earth and other worlds to combat this menace." Holmes nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. "This alliance could change the face of the galaxy, Your Majesty." As the Odyssey set course for Akamar Prime, Holmes and Mira found a quiet moment alone. The intensity of their shared experiences hung between them, unspoken but palpable. "What you did back there," Holmes said softly, "with Zix. I had no idea Akamarians possess such abilities." Mira's tail curled around her feet, a gesture Holmes now recognized as a sign of vulnerability. "It's a closely guarded secret of the royal bloodline. I've never used it before today." Their eyes met, and Holmes felt the same electricity he had experienced in the artificial habitat. He reached out, his fingers hovering just above Mira's scaled hand. "Mira, The ship's intercom crackled to life, interrupting the moment. "Captain to the bridge," Bennett's voice announced. "We're receiving a priority transmission from Starfleet Command." Reality crashed back in around them. The genetic ascendancy was still out there, and the galaxy was in danger. Their personal feelings, complex as they were, would have to wait. "We should go," Mira said, her voice tinged with regret. Holmes nodded, straightening his uniform. As they made their way to the bridge, he knew that the coming battle against the genetic ascendancy would test them in ways they couldn't imagine. But with Mira by his side and the newfound alliance between their peoples, he felt a glimmer of hope for the future. Future for both their peoples. As the Odyssey dropped out of warp above Akamar Prime, Holmes and Mira exchanged a glance, steeling themselves for the challenges ahead. The moment they beamed down to the surface, Holmes and Mira were whisked away to an emergency meeting with the Akamarian High Council. The ornate chamber, with its vaulted ceilings and crystalline walls, buzzed with tension as council members shifted nervously in their seats. Queen Mira stepped forward, her scales shimmering under the chamber's ambient light. Esteemed members of the High Council, we bring grave news. Captain Holmes activated a holographic display, filling the room with images of Zix's facility and the hybrid creatures they had encountered. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the assembly as Holmes detailed the genetic ascendancy's plans. This threat extends beyond our world, Mira continued, her voice steady and resolute. The ascendancy seeks to remake the entire galaxy in their image. We can no longer afford to remain isolated. An older council member, his scales dulled with age, leaned forward. Are you suggesting we ally ourselves with humans? After centuries of separation? Mira's tail twitched, a sign of purpose Holmes had come to recognize. I am. Our experiences with Captain Holmes and his crew have shown me the strength we can find in unity. As the council deliberated, Dr. Alera and the Odyssey science team worked tirelessly in a makeshift lab. Holographic displays flickered with complex genetic sequences as they analyzed the stolen data. Captain, Alera called, her eyes wide with excitement. We've made a breakthrough. The synthetic compound in our water supply. We can neutralize it. Holmes leaned in, studying the data. How? A combination of human and Akamarian DNA, Alera explained. It's as if our genetic structures complement each other perfectly. The news spread quickly, easing tensions on Akamar Prime. However, not everyone welcomed this development. In the shadows of the capital, General Zorn, a hardline military leader, gathered his supporters. We cannot allow our species to be polluted by human interference, Zorn growled, his scales dripping. We must act now. As night fell, alarms blared throughout the royal palace. Holmes and Mira, deep in discussion about the alliance, were startled by the sudden commotion. Your Majesty, a guard burst in, breathing heavily. General Zorn has seized control of the defense systems. We're under attack. Explosions rocked the building as Zorn's forces surrounded the palace. Holmes tapped his communicator. Odyssey, we need immediate assistance. Negative, Captain, Bennett's voice crackled through. They've activated a planetary shield. We can't beam you out or provide orbital support. Mira's eyes narrowed. Then we'll have to find our own way out. She moved to a seemingly blank wall, pressing a hidden panel. A section of the wall slid away, revealing a dark passage. Secret tunnels known only to the royal family. Come on. Holmes and Mira plunged into the darkness, the sounds of combat fading behind them. As they navigated the narrow passages, their bodies pressed close in the confined space. The physical proximity reignited the spark between them, their hearts racing from more than just the danger. After what felt like hours of creeping through the tunnels, they emerged in a secluded courtyard. Holmes quickly contacted the Odyssey. Bennett, we're clear of the palace. Can you disable those defense systems? Affirmative, Captain. Stand by. Moments later, precise phaser fire lanced down from the sky, striking key military installations around the capital. With the rebel-controlled defenses neutralized, loyal Akamarian forces quickly regained control. In the aftermath of the failed coup, Queen Mira addressed her people from the steps of the palace. Thousands gathered in the square below, their scales shimmering in a sea of colors. My fellow Akamarians, Mira began, her voice carried by hidden speakers. Today we stand at a crossroads. The fertility crisis that has plagued our people is on the verge of being solved, thanks to cooperation with our human allies. But we face a greater threat, the genetic ascendancy. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as Mira continued. To combat this menace, we must embrace a new era of interstellar cooperation. Today I formally announce an alliance between Akamar Prime and Earth. The announcement was met with a mixture of cheers and uncertain whispers. Mira raised her hand, silencing the crowd. To symbolize this new bond, I invite Captain Holmes to participate in the sacred Akamarian bonding ceremony. Holmes stepped forward, his heart pounding. He understood the gravity of this moment, not just for him and Mira, but for both their species. As they prepared for the ceremony, Holmes couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come since their first tense encounter. The grand crystal hall of the palace was packed with Acamarians and the crew of the Odyssey. Holmes and Mira stood before the assembled crowd, dressed in ceremonial garments that accentuated their physical differences. Holmes in a form-fitting suit that shimmered like starlight, Mira in flowing robes that mimicked the patterns of her scales. As they began the ritual, a hush fell over the hall. Their hands intertwined, human fingers against scaled ones. They moved in a slow, graceful dance, each step bringing them closer. The final moment approached, and Holmes found himself lost in Mira's eyes, seeing not just an alien queen, but a partner he had come to deeply care for. Their lips met in a passionate embrace, sending a collective gasp through the audience. The kiss, broadcast across Acamar Prime and transmitted to Earth, became an instant symbol of their newfound alliance. As they parted breathless, Dr. Alara rushed into the hall. "Your Majesty, Captain, the cure is ready for testing, but we need volunteers." Without hesitation, Holmes and Mira stepped forward. "We'll do it," they said in unison. Hand in hand, they followed Dr. Alara to a specially prepared medical chamber. As the doors sealed behind them, Holmes squeezed Mira's hand. Whatever the outcome, they would face it together. Together. The doors hissed shut behind them, sealing them in the sterile environment of the medical chamber. Dr. Alara's voice came through the intercom, calm and professional. "We're ready to begin. Please lie down on the adjacent beds." Holmes and Mira exchanged a glance, their hands still intertwined. As they separated to take their positions, Holmes felt a momentary pang of loss at breaking contact. They reclined on the specially designed medical beds, their bodies parallel but not touching. A complex array of medical devices descended from the ceiling, surrounding them with a web of sensors, tubes, and emitters. Dr. Ilara's team worked efficiently, attaching monitors to their skin and inserting intravenous lines. "The procedure will take several hours," Dr. Ilara explained. "You may experience some discomfort, but it shouldn't be painful. If at any point you feel distress, please alert us immediately." As the treatment began, Holmes felt a tingling sensation spread through his body. He turned his head to look at Mira, finding her eyes already on him. Her scales shimmered under the harsh medical lights, a kaleidoscope of colors that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the hum of the machines. Time seemed to stretch and compress as the hours passed. Holmes drifted in and out of full awareness, his senses occasionally sharpening to hyperclarity before fading again. In these moments of lucidity, he became acutely aware of Mira's presence beside him, as if he could feel the very air between them vibrating with her essence. Midway through the procedure, Holmes experienced a sudden surge of sensation. His heart raced and he gasped involuntarily. But the feeling wasn't his own. He realized with a start that he was experiencing Mira's physical response to the treatment. "Dr. Alara," he called out, his voice hoarse. "Something's happening." The doctor's face appeared above him, her expression a mix of concern and fascination. "Your vital signs are synchronizing," she said, her eyes darting between Holmes and Mira. "Brain activity in both of you is showing unprecedented patterns of alignment. How do you feel?" "I can sense Mira," Holmes said, struggling to find the words to describe the experience. "It's like I can feel what she's feeling." Mira's voice joined his, filled with wonder. "I feel it too. It's as if our minds are reaching out to each other." Dr. Alara nodded, making notes on her datapad. "This is unexpected, but potentially groundbreaking. We'll monitor this development closely." As the treatment progressed, the connection between Holmes and Mira deepened. By the time the procedure concluded, they were acutely aware of each other's physical and emotional states, linked in a way neither had ever experienced before. The medical devices retracted, and Dr. Alara helped them sit up. Holmes and Mira immediately reached for each other, their hands clasping as if drawn by an irresistible force. "The initial results are extremely promising," Dr. Alara announced, her voice brimming with excitement. "Queen Mira, your reproductive system is showing significant signs of increased functionality. And Captain Holmes, your genetic material has successfully integrated with Akamarian DNA at a level we've never seen before. Holmes barely heard her words, lost in the sensation of Mira's emotions flowing through him. Joy, relief, and a deep sense of connection washed over him in waves. "There's more," Dr. Ilera continued, her eyes fixed on the readouts. "The empathic link you're experiencing, it's stable and appears to be strengthening. This could have far-reaching implications for human-Akamarian relations." As they left the medical chamber, word of their successful treatment spread rapidly through the palace. Akamarian officials and human diplomats alike clamored for information, their questions a blur of excited chatter. In the midst of the commotion, Holmes and Mira found a moment of relative quiet. They stood close, foreheads nearly touching, as they grappled with their new reality. "I've never felt anything like this," Mira whispered, her tail curling around Holmes's leg. "It's as if a part of you lives inside me now." Holmes nodded, overwhelmed by the depth of their connection. "We're going to need to figure out what this means for us, for our people." Before they could discuss further, a palace aide approached, bowing deeply. "Your Majesty, Captain, your presence is requested in the High Council chamber. News of the treatment's success has reached Earth, and their representatives are demanding a full briefing." As they made their way to the council chamber, Holmes and Mira could sense the mix of excitement and apprehension rippling through the palace. Their empathic link allowed them to navigate the complex emotions surrounding them with newfound clarity. Entering the Grand Hall, they found it packed with Akamarian council members and human officials, their faces a mix of curiosity and concern. At the center of the room, a large holographic display flickered to life, showing the stern visage of Admiral Zhao, the head of Starfleet Command. "Captain Holmes, Queen Mira," the Admiral's voice boomed through the chamber. "We've received Dr. Ilara's preliminary report. While the success of the fertility treatment is certainly cause for celebration, the development of this empathic link raises serious questions." Holmes stepped forward, feeling Mira's steadying presence through their bond. "Admiral, I assure you that this unexpected development does not compromise my ability to command or my loyalty to Starfleet." Murmurs rippled through the assembled crowd. An Akamarian council member, his scales a deep crimson, spoke up. "And what of Queen Mira's ability to rule? How can we be certain her judgment isn't clouded by this connection to a human?" Mira's tail lashed in irritation, a sentiment Holmes felt echo through their link. "My commitment to Akamar Prime remains unwavering," she declared, her voice firm. "This bond with Captain Holmes strengthens our alliance and provides us with a unique advantage in facing the threats that lie ahead." As the debate intensified, Holmes and Mira stood united, their linked minds working in concert to address the concerns raised by both sides. Through their connection, they coordinated their responses with unparalleled precision, presenting a united front that began to sway even the most skeptical observers. Dr. Ilara, who had been quietly observing the proceedings, suddenly stepped forward. "Esteemed leaders, if I may," she began, her voice cutting through the chatter. "What we've witnessed here today is more than just a medical breakthrough. It's a glimpse into the potential future of human Akamarian cooperation." She activated a holographic display showing complex data streams that represented Holmes and Mira's neural patterns. This empathic link allows for a level of understanding and coordination that we've never seen before. Imagine the possibilities if we could replicate this on a larger scale. The room fell silent as Dr. Ilera outlined her proposal for a specialized team of human Akamarian pairs, bonded through a similar process. "This could be our most effective weapon against the genetic ascendancy," she concluded, "a force that combines the strengths of both our species, linked in a way our enemies could never anticipate." As the implications of Dr. Ilara's proposal sank in, the atmosphere in the council chamber shifted. Excitement mingled with apprehension as both human and Akamarian leaders began to debate the potential risks and rewards of such a program. Holmes and Mira exchanged a glance, their linked minds already considering the possibilities. They knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but their newfound connection gave them a strength and purpose they had never known before. As the council prepared to vote on Dr. Alara's proposal, Holmes and Mira stepped forward, ready to make their case for this bold new initiative. The fate of their alliance, and perhaps the galaxy itself, hung in the balance as they prepared to address the assembled leaders. Leaders. The fate of their alliance, and perhaps the galaxy itself, hung in the balance as they prepared to address the assembled council. Holmes stepped forward, his voice steady and clear. Esteemed members of the Earth Acamarian Council, we stand before you today not just as representatives of our respective species, but as living proof of what our alliance can achieve. Mira continued seamlessly, her tail swaying gently as she spoke. The empathic link we now share is more than a medical breakthrough. It's a window into a future where our two species can work together in perfect harmony. As they took turns presenting their case, Holmes and Mira demonstrated the unique advantages of their connection. They anticipated each other's thoughts, finishing sentences and providing supporting arguments with uncanny precision. The council members watched, some with awe, others with thinly veiled skepticism. Admiral Zhao's holographic image leaned forward, his brow furrowed. While the potential benefits are clear, we must consider the ethical implications. How can we be certain this bond won't compromise individual autonomy? Before Holmes or Mira could respond, a piercing alarm cut through the chamber. A young Acamarian burst into the room, scales flushed with urgency. Your Majesty, Admiral, we've detected genetic ascendancy agents on both Earth and Acamar Prime. They're attempting to infiltrate our key research facilities. The chamber erupted into chaos. Council members shouted over one another, fear and anger palpable in the air. Holmes and Mira exchanged a glance, their shared link allowing them to remain calm amidst the turmoil. Silence, Mira's voice rang out, instantly quieting the room. This is precisely why we need to act now. Our proposal isn't just about fostering understanding between our species. It's about creating a powerful new weapon against the ascendancy threat. Holmes nodded, building on her point. A team of bonded human Acamarian pairs would have unprecedented advantages in combat and intelligence gathering. We could anticipate and counter ascendancy moves before they even make them. The council members murmured among themselves, the immediate threat of infiltration lending weight to Holmes and Mira's arguments. After a tense few minutes of deliberation, Admiral Zhao spoke. In light of this development, we have little choice. We hereby approve the formation of a small elite team of human Acamarian pairs. This initiative will be known as Project Symbiosis. As the council hammered out the details, Dr. Alara was quickly appointed to oversee the selection and bonding process. A secret facility on a neutral planet was established to conduct the procedures away from prying eyes. In the weeks that followed, Holmes and Mira found themselves at the heart of Project Symbiosis. They assisted Dr. Alara in refining the bonding procedure, drawing on their own experiences to help shape the program. The selection process was rigorous. Hundreds of volunteers from both species underwent extensive physical and psychological screening. Holmes and Mira worked tirelessly, evaluating potential candidates and helping to pair them based on compatibility assessments. One pair that stood out was Lieutenant Jack Harper, a skilled human pilot with a quick wit and steady nerves, and Lyra, an Acamarian weapons expert whose analytical mind complemented Harper's intuitive flying style. As the first group of selected pairs prepared for the bonding procedure, Holmes and Mira stood in the observation room of the secret facility. Through the window, they watched as Harper and Lyra were guided into the medical chamber. I remember how nervous I was, Holmes murmured, feeling a flutter of anxiety from Mira through their link. She squeezed his hand. They're brave, just as you were. The procedure began, and Holmes and Mira monitored the process closely. Hours ticked by as machines hummed and vital signs fluctuated. Finally, Dr. Alara emerged from the chamber, her face alight with excitement. It worked, she announced. They've established a stable empathic link, not quite as strong as yours, but impressive nonetheless. Over the next few days, more pairs underwent the procedure with varying degrees of success. Some developed strong connections similar to Holmes and Mira's, while others experienced more limited abilities. As the training phase began, Holmes and Mira took on the role of mentors. They guided the newly bonded pairs through combat simulations, problem-solving exercises, and diplomatic scenarios. The training facility buzzed with activity as human and Akamarian partners learned to navigate their enhanced connections. During a particularly intense combat simulation, Harper and Lyra demonstrated the potential of their bond. Harper piloted a virtual spacecraft with incredible precision, while Lyra operated the weapon systems. Their movements were perfectly synchronized, anticipating threats before they appeared on sensors. "Remarkable," Dr. Alara murmured, reviewing the data. "Their reaction times are off the charts. If we can replicate this across all our pairs, we'll have a significant advantage against the Ascendancy." But as the training progressed, unexpected side effects began to manifest. One night, Holmes woke with a start, his mind filled with vivid images of an Akamarian cityscape he had never seen. "Mira," he called out, finding her already awake and looking equally unsettled. "I saw your childhood home," she said, her voice tinged with wonder and confusion. "The red door, the oak tree in the yard." They weren't alone. Other pairs reported similar experiences, shared dreams, flashes of memories that weren't their own. Some even claimed to sense the emotions of other bonded individuals, albeit faintly. Dr. Alara and her team worked around the clock to understand these developments. They conducted new tests, refined their theories, and sought ways to enhance the beneficial aspects of the empathic links while mitigating potential risks. As Project Symbiosis continued to evolve, reports of genetic ascendancy activity became more frequent and alarming. Outlying colonies on both human and Akamarian worlds reported strange occurrences and disappearances. Intelligence suggested the Ascendancy was accelerating its plans for galactic domination. In response, the Earth-Akamarian Alliance began preparations for a preemptive strike against known genetic ascendancy installations. Project Symbiosis teams were assigned key roles in the upcoming operation, with Holmes and Mira taking command of the lead assault team. As they prepared for the mission, Dr. Alara approached them with a new proposal. Her eyes gleamed with a mixture of excitement and apprehension as she outlined her latest research. "I believe I've found a way to expand the empathic network beyond individual pairs," she explained. "We could potentially link all bonded pairs into a collective consciousness, vastly improving coordination and effectiveness in combat." Holmes felt a surge of hope through his link with Mira, but it was tempered by caution. "What are the risks?" he asked. Dr. Alara's expression grew serious. "The procedure is experimental. There's a chance of permanent mental fusion. You could lose your individual identities entirely." Holmes and Mira exchanged a long look, their empathic link buzzing with a complex mix of emotions. Finally, they turned back to Dr. Alara, their decision made. "We'll do it," Mira said firmly. "Or if there's a chance this could give us the edge we need against the Ascendancy, we have to try." As they followed Dr. Alara into her laboratory, Holmes reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. From their first tense encounter to the intimate bond they now shared, every step had led them here. The doors of the lab slid shut behind them, the air heavy with the weight of what was to come. As Dr. Alara began to prepare her equipment, Holmes and Mira clasped hands, their minds and hearts aligned. Whatever the outcome, they would face it together, not just for themselves, but for the future of both their species and the galaxy they had sworn to protect. Protect. As Dr. Alara initiated the procedure, Holmes and Mira lay side by side on adjacent medical beds, their hands intertwined. The lab hummed with energy as advanced equipment monitored their vital signs and neural activity. "Beginning consciousness expansion sequence," Dr. Alara announced, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. A warm sensation spread through Holmes's body, starting from the base of his skull and radiating outward. He felt Mira's presence in his mind grow stronger, more vivid. Their shared mental space expanded, memories and emotions flowing between them with increasing speed and intensity. Suddenly, their empathic link surged beyond its previous boundaries. Holmes gasped as his consciousness merged with Mira's, their individual thoughts blending into a singular stream. The intimacy of their connection was overwhelming, beautiful, and terrifying all at once. But the expansion didn't stop there. Without warning, their enhanced link tapped into the wider network of bonded human Akamarian pairs. A flood of foreign thoughts and emotions crashed over them like a tidal wave. Alarms blared as Holmes and Mira's vital signs spiked. Dr. Alara's team rushed to stabilize them, but the cascade effect had already begun. Throughout the facility, other bonded pairs collapsed, overwhelmed by the sudden influx of shared consciousness. In the training simulator, Lieutenant Harper and Lyra stumbled mid-exercise, their minds reeling from the unexpected connection. "What's happening?" Harper gasped, clutching his head. Lyra's scales rippled with distress. "I can feel everyone," she whispered, her eyes wide with shock. Back in the lab, Dr. Alara worked frantically to isolate the expanded network. "We need to contain this before—" Her words were cut short by a deafening explosion. The facility shook, emergency lights flashing as alarms shifted from medical to security alerts. "We're under attack," a voice shouted over the intercom. "Genetic ascendancy forces have breached the perimeter." Chaos erupted throughout the complex. Bonded pairs, still disoriented from the consciousness expansion, struggled to respond to the threat. Ascendancy agents, who had been hidden among the support staff, sprang into action, sabotaging defense systems and communications. In the lab, Holmes and Mira fought to regain control of their minds and bodies. Their enhanced connection allowed them to adapt more quickly than the others, filtering through the cacophony of thoughts and emotions. "Mira," Holmes called out, both aloud and through their link. "We need to focus. The others, they're lost in the noise." Mira nodded, her tail lashing with perseverance. Together, they concentrated on the shared mental space, gradually learning to navigate the expanded network. As they did, they began to sense the other pairs more clearly, feeling their confusion and fear. "We can use this," Mira realized. "We can coordinate them, guide them through the chaos." Holmes agreed, and they set to work. Through their enhanced link, they reached out to the scattered symbiosis teams, providing a beacon of stability in the mental storm. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Harper and Lyra had regained their bearings. Their strong empathic bond allowed them to adapt quickly to the expanded network, and they took charge of organizing the facility's defense. "Teams Alpha and Bravo secure the North Corridor," Harper commanded, his thoughts echoing through the shared consciousness. "Charlie Team, reinforce the main entrance." Lyra coordinated their movements with preternatural precision, her analytical mind processing incoming data at incredible speeds. Together, they directed a counterattack against the ascendancy forces, utilizing the enhanced coordination of the bonded pairs to outmaneuver the enemy. As the battle raged, Dr. Alara made a startling discovery. Analyzing the data from the expanded consciousness network, she realized they had inadvertently tapped into a vulnerability in the genetic ascendancy's own communication systems. "Holmes, Mira," she called out, her voice urgent. "The residual genetic links between the ascendancy's hybrid soldiers and their original species, we can use our network to disrupt their coordination." Understanding flowed between Holmes and Mira instantly. They relayed the information to the other pairs, directing them to focus their collective mental energy on interfering with the ascendancy's command structure. The effort was immense. Bonded pairs across the facility strained to project their thoughts, targeting the genetic links of the invading forces. Several collapsed from the exertion, their minds temporarily overloaded. But the gambit worked. The ascendancy's carefully coordinated attack began to falter. Hybrid soldiers stumbled, their movements becoming erratic as their communication networks were scrambled. Harper and Lyra seized the opportunity. "Now's our chance," Harper thought, the message resonating through the shared consciousness. "Push them back." The symbiosis teams rallied, driving the invaders out of the facility. Under the leadership of Holmes, Mira, Harper, and Lyra, they cornered and captured several high-ranking ascendancy operatives. As the last of the enemy forces were subdued, an eerie calm settled over the facility. The bonded pairs found themselves permanently linked to varying degrees, with Holmes and Mira at the center of this new collective consciousness. Dr. Ilara emerged from her lab, her face a mixture of excitement and concern. "We've done it," she announced, "but the implications of this expanded network, they're far beyond what we anticipated." Holmes and Mira stood side by side, their minds more intertwined than ever before. They could feel the other pairs, sense their thoughts and emotions like a constant background hum. "This changes everything," Mira said softly. Holmes nodded, his mind already racing with the possibilities and challenges that lay ahead. The real question is, how do we use this advantage against the Ascendancy? As if in answer, Dr. Alara's team began analyzing the captured operatives, their initial findings hinting at a central hub where the Ascendancy's most crucial research was conducted. The battle was won, but a new chapter in the war against the genetic ascendancy was just beginning. Holmes and Mira exchanged a glance, their enhanced bond conveying volumes without a word. Whatever came next, they would face it together, along with the entire network of bonded pairs now inexorably linked to their fate. Consciousness. The implications of this expanded network were staggering, but there was no time to fully process them. The Alliance had to act swiftly to capitalize on their newfound advantage. In the days that followed, Captain Holmes and Queen Mira found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of activity. They were tasked with assembling an elite strike force, carefully selecting the most compatible and effective symbiosis pairs. Lieutenant Jack Harper and his Acamarian partner Lyra quickly rose to the top of their list. Their combat scores are off the charts, Mira observed, reviewing the data on a holographic display. And their empathic link is one of the strongest we've seen. Holmes nodded, feeling a surge of approval through their shared consciousness. Agreed. They'll be perfect for the infiltration team. As the strike force took shape, Dr. Ilar and her team worked tirelessly to analyze the captured Ascendancy operatives. Late one night, as Holmes and Mira were coordinating training exercises, Dr. Ilara burst into the command center, her eyes wide with excitement. "We've found it," she announced breathlessly, "the central hub of the genetic ascendancy's operations. It's hidden in a remote star system, disguised as a nebula." The revelation sent a ripple of excitement through the expanded consciousness network. Finally, they had a clear target for their upcoming mission. Intensive training began immediately. The strike force honed their enhanced abilities, developing new tactics that leveraged their shared consciousness. In the combat simulator, Harper and Lyra moved with preternatural grace, their actions perfectly synchronized. "Impressive," Holmes murmured as he observed their performance. "They're adapting to the expanded network even faster than we anticipated." Mira's tail twitched in agreement. "It's not just them. Look." She directed Holmes' attention to the other pairs in the simulator. Each team was displaying an unprecedented level of coordination, reacting to threats before they even appeared on sensors. As the training progressed, Holmes and Mira experienced an unexpected deepening of their own connection. Their minds became so intertwined that at times they struggled to distinguish their individual thoughts and memories. One evening, as they reviewed mission plans in their quarters, Holmes found himself overwhelmed by a vivid memory of soaring through Akamar Prime's crimson skies. He blinked, momentarily disoriented. "That was one of my first flight lessons," Mira said softly, sensing his confusion. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to project it so strongly." Holmes shook his head, marveling at the intensity of the shared experience. "Don't apologize, it's incredible." Their eyes met, and in that moment, the boundaries between them seemed to dissolve entirely. They came together in a passionate embrace, their physical intimacy mirroring the profound connection of their minds. Later, as they lay intertwined, Mira traced the line of Holmes's jaw with a delicate claw. "We need to be careful," she said, her thoughts tinged with concern. "This level of connection, it could be dangerous if we're not vigilant." Holmes nodded, understanding the implications. The Alliance leadership had already expressed concerns about the potential risks of the expanded network. Strict protocols were being implemented for its use, including the establishment of a secure facility where bonded pairs could safely access the collective consciousness. As the primary conduits for the network, Holmes and Mira bore the responsibility of managing the flow of information and coordinating the pairs during missions. It was a daunting task, but one they were uniquely suited for. Their planning was interrupted by an urgent communication from Alliance Command. Intelligence reports indicated that the genetic ascendancy was accelerating its plans. Several outer colonies had reported incidents of mass abductions, suggesting large-scale genetic experiments were underway. "We need to move faster," Holmes said, his eyebrows furrowed. "Every day we delay gives the ascendancy more time to advance their research." Mira nodded, her scales rippling with tension. "Agreed, but we can't rush in unprepared. Our strike force needs every advantage we can give them. As if in answer to their concerns, the Alliance unveiled a new technology developed by their joint human-Acamarian research team, the quantum resonance armor, a sophisticated exosuit designed to amplify the abilities of bonded pairs while providing enhanced protection. Holmes and Mira volunteered to be the first to test the armor. As they donned the sleek, iridescent suits, they felt a subtle hum of energy coursing through their bodies. When they activated the neural interface, the sensation intensified dramatically. Holmes gasped as his awareness expanded exponentially. He could feel every micro-movement of Mira's body as if it were his own. Their thoughts flowed together in a seamless stream of tactical analysis and emotional resonance. Moving as one, they entered the combat simulator. The results were beyond anything they had imagined. They anticipated threats with uncanny accuracy, their responses so perfectly coordinated that it seemed impossible for any enemy to match them. The demonstration convinced Alliance leadership to fast-track production of the quantum resonance armor for the entire strike force. As the final pieces fell into place, Holmes and Mira began the last phase of mission planning. They developed a multi-pronged strategy to infiltrate the Ascendancy's hidden space station, focusing on neutralizing its defenses and securing critical data on their genetic manipulation techniques. The plan relied heavily on the strike force's unique abilities and the element of surprise. As the launch date approached, a routine scan of the captured Ascendancy operatives revealed an alarming development. One of the prisoners showed signs of rapid genetic mutation, suggesting that the Ascendancy's experiments had progressed further than initially thought. Dr. Alara's analysis painted a grim picture. They may be on the verge of creating a new species of hyper-evolved beings, she explained, her voice tight with concern. If they succeed, it could tip the balance of power in the galaxy. Holmes and Mira exchanged a look, their shared consciousness buzzing with the implications of this discovery. They quickly modified their plan to include a high-risk infiltration of the station's core research labs. It wasn't enough to simply destroy the Ascendancy's hub. They needed to secure samples and data on these advanced genetic modifications to develop countermeasures. As the strike force boarded their advanced stealth ship, the Shadowhawk, tension hung heavy in the air. Holmes and Mira took their positions as mission leaders, their minds more closely linked than ever through their enhanced connection and the quantum resonance armor. The ship's engines hummed to life, preparing for the jump to hyperspace. Holmes felt Mira's presence in his mind, a steady anchor amidst the swirling currents of the expanded consciousness network. Together, they reached out to the other bonded pairs, their thoughts resonating with a singular purpose. As the Shadowhawk disappeared into the swirling vortex of hyperspace, Holmes and Mira stood ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Their bond, forged in the crucible of conflict and strengthened by their shared experiences, would be put to the ultimate test in the battle against the genetic Ascendancy. Ascendancy. As the Shadowhawk sliced through the fabric of hyperspace, Holmes and Mira stood at the helm, their minds united in purpose and strategy. The ship shuddered as it emerged from hyperspace, the swirling vortex collapsing behind them. Before them stretched an expanse of cosmic gases and dust, the nebula that concealed their target. Holmes felt Mira's sharp intake of breath through their shared consciousness, her Acamarian senses attuned to the subtle shifts in the cosmic environment. Sensors detecting no immediate threats, Harper reported from his station, his voice tight with focus. Holmes nodded, his eyes scanning the view screen. Engage cloaking systems. Let's not give them any early warnings. The Shadowhawk's advanced stealth technology hummed to life, rendering the ship virtually invisible to conventional detection methods. As they approached the nebula's outer fringes, Mira's tail twitched with nervous energy. Something's not right, she murmured, her thoughts echoing in Holmes's mind. The nebula. It's too quiet. Holmes frowned, trusting his partner's instincts. He reached out through their expanded consciousness, connecting with the other bonded pairs on the bridge. Everyone, heighten your awareness. We may be walking into a trap. As the Shadowhawk penetrated deeper into the nebula, the true nature of their challenge revealed itself. Lyra, her alien eyes more sensitive to certain wavelengths, was the first to notice. "Captain Queen Mira," she called out, her voice imbued with urgency. "I'm detecting a network of something, microscopic particles spread throughout the nebula." Holmes and Mira shared a look of alarm. This was far beyond what their intelligence had prepared them for. Through their link, they rapidly assessed the situation, combining Holmes's tactical analysis with Mira's intuitive understanding of spatial dynamics. "It's a detection grid," Holmes announced to the crew. "Far more advanced than anything we've encountered before. Standard evasive maneuvers won't cut it." Mira's mind raced alongside his, and together they formulated a plan. "The nanobots," she said aloud, her thought already half-formed in Holmes's mind. "If we reprogram them to mimic the nebula's natural movement, we can create a safe corridor," Holmes finished. He turned to Dr. Alara, who had insisted on joining the mission. "Doctor, how quickly can you modify our nanobot swarm?" Dr. Alara's fingers flew over her console. "Give me 5 minutes. I'll need to analyze the nebula's particulate patterns first." Those 5 minutes stretched into an eternity as the Shadowhawk hovered on the edge of detection. Holmes felt the tension radiating through the empathic network, each bonded pair poised for action. Finally, Dr. Alara gave the signal. "Releasing nanobot swarm," she announced. The view screen came alive with a shimmering cloud of microscopic robots, indistinguishable from the nebula's natural particles. They spread out before the ship, creating a tunnel of safety through the Ascendancy's sensor net. As they navigated this precarious path, the true scale of the genetic Ascendancy's operation became clear. The space station loomed before them, a massive structure that dwarfed even the largest known human or Acamarian installations. Its design was a hodgepodge of different architectural styles, a physical testament to the diverse genetic material the Ascendancy had collected. "By the stars," Mira breathed, her awe resonating through their link. Holmes shared her sentiment, recognizing the monumental task that lay ahead of them. They approached a section of the station's outer hull that appeared less heavily fortified. Harper and Lyra, their movements in perfect sync, began the delicate process of bypassing the airlock's security systems. Holmes and Mira used this time to coordinate the rest of the strike force through their central position in the empathic network. They assigned specific objectives to each team, disabling defenses, securing genetic research data, and locating any captive test subjects. With a soft hiss, the airlock cycled open. Harper gave a terse nod. "We're in." The strike force moved swiftly through the station's labyrinthine corridors, their progress greatly aided by the expanded consciousness network. Holmes and Mira led the team tasked with securing the genetic research data, their steps purposeful as they made their way toward the central laboratories. Suddenly, Mira's tail stiffened. "Contact!" she hissed, both aloud and through their link. A group of Ascendancy guards rounded the corner, their movements unnaturally fluid. Holmes's breath caught as he realized these were no ordinary opponents. The guards were hybrids, their bodies showcasing abilities far beyond standard humanoids. The fight erupted with explosive intensity. Holmes and Mira moved as one, their quantum resonance armor amplifying their already formidable abilities. They weaved and struck with preternatural coordination, barely keeping pace with the enhanced reflexes of their adversaries. A searing pain lanced through their shared consciousness as an energy weapon found a weak point in Mira's armor. Holmes stumbled, momentarily disoriented by the feedback. In that split second of vulnerability, a hybrid guard landed a crushing blow to his chest, cracking the armor and sending a surge of agony through the neural interface. The shared experience of pain and danger triggered something deep within their empathic link. Holmes felt Mira's presence in his mind intensify, their connection deepening beyond anything they had experienced before. Strength flowed between them, transcending the physical. With renewed vigor, they struck back. Holmes's tactical genius melded seamlessly with Mira's Acamarian combat techniques, creating a fighting style that was neither human nor alien, but something entirely new. The hybrid guards, for all their genetic enhancements, couldn't match the perfect synergy of the bonded pair. As the last guard fell, Holmes turned to Mira, his hands gentle as he examined her injury. The intimacy of the moment was palpable, their physical proximity mirroring the closeness of their minds. An urgent communication from Harper's team shattered the moment, Captain, Your Majesty. Harper's voice crackled through the comm. We've found something. You need to see this. Holmes and Mira exchanged a glance, sensing the gravity of the situation through the empathic network. They hurried to rendezvous with Harper and Lyra, their steps quickened by a shared sense of foreboding. The sight that greeted them sent a chill through their linked minds. A vast chamber stretched before them, filled with rows upon rows of stasis pods. Each contained a different hybrid creature, some recognizably humanoid, others twisted into forms that defied easy classification. It's an army, Lyra whispered, her alien features contorted with horror. Holmes nodded grimly. And if they succeed in perfecting these hybrids, the entire galaxy could fall, Mira finished, her thoughts meshing with his. Their silent communication was interrupted by the sudden blare of alarms. Red emergency lights bathed the chamber in an eerie glow. Our presence has been detected, Holmes announced, his mind already racing with revised strategies. We need to move now. Priority is retrieving data on these advanced hybrids. We need to find a way to counter them. Through the empathic network, Holmes and Mira rallied their team. Time was running out, and the fate of their mission hung by a thread. As they prepared to push deeper into the station's core, facing the full might of the genetic ascendancy, Holmes felt Mira's presence in his mind, strong and unwavering. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, their bond forged in battle and strengthened by adversity. The true test of their connection and the strike force's capabilities was yet to come. Come. As they prepared to push deeper into the station's core, facing the full might of the genetic ascendancy, Holmes felt Mira's presence in his mind, strong and unwavering. The blaring alarms grew louder as Holmes and Mira led their strike force through the labyrinthine corridors of the space station. The red emergency lights cast eerie shadows, transforming the sterile white walls into a hellish landscape. Holmes felt the tension rippling through the empathic network, each team member's heightened awareness feeding into a collective sense of urgency. Move fast, stay alert, Holmes commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. Mira moved in perfect sync beside him, her tail twitching with each new sound or movement. As they rounded a corner, a squad of hybrid guards materialized, their bodies a grotesque fusion of various species. Holmes's mind raced, analyzing their opponent's strengths and weaknesses in a fraction of a second. Through their link, Mira instantly understood his strategy. They moved as one, Holmes ducking low as Mira leapt over him, her claws extended. The first guard fell before he could even raise his weapon. Holmes pivoted, using his momentum to slam another guard into the wall, the quantum resonance armor amplifying his strength tenfold. The battle was fierce but brief. The strike force's enhanced abilities, coupled with the seamless coordination provided by their empathic network, proved too much for the hybrid guards. As the last opponent fell, Harper's voice crackled over the comm. Captain, we found something. A hidden laboratory just ahead. Holmes and Mira exchanged a glance, their shared consciousness buzzing with anticipation. They moved swiftly, following Harper's directions until they reached a massive reinforced door. Lyra, can you bypass it? Holmes asked. The alien's fingers danced over the control panel, her eyes unfocused as she communicated silently with Harper through their bond. After a tense moment, the door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. The sight that greeted them sent a collective shudder through the strike force. Row upon row of stasis pods lined the walls, each containing a creature more horrifying than the last. Holmes approached one, his breath catching in his throat as he recognized features from a dozen different species, including humans and Acamarians. They're perfecting their hybrids, Mira whispered, her tail curling tightly around her leg in distress. Before Holmes could respond, a deafening clang echoed through the chamber. A massive security bulkhead slammed down behind them, cutting off their escape route. Harper, Lyra, work on bypassing that bulkhead, Holmes ordered. Everyone else, prepare for incoming hostiles. They know we're here now. As if on cue, the sound of pounding footsteps filled the air. Holmes and Mira took up defensive positions, their minds so closely linked that they moved like a single organism. The first wave of hybrid attackers burst into the room, their enhanced bodies twisted into weapons of war. The battle that ensued was unlike anything Holmes had ever experienced. His tactical mind worked in overdrive, anticipating each attack and formulating counter-moves. Mira's Akamarian combat instincts flowed through him, allowing him to execute maneuvers he'd never trained for. They weaved and struck with preternatural grace, downing opponent after opponent, but the onslaught was relentless. As they dispatched one group, another would take its place, each more ferocious than the last. During a brief lull in the fighting, Holmes noticed Mira favoring her left side. The injury from their earlier encounter had worsened, slowing her movements and weakening her strikes. He could feel her pain through their link, a dull throb that threatened to overwhelm them both. Making a split-second decision, Holmes activated a rarely used function of the quantum resonance armor. "Mira, brace yourself," he warned, before initiating the energy transfer. The sensation was indescribable. Holmes felt as if his very essence was flowing into Mira, their minds merging even more completely than before. Memories flashed between them, childhood fears, moments of triumph, quiet nights under alien stars. For a timeless instant, they were one being, transcending the boundaries of their individual selves. As the transfer completed, Mira straightened, her injury healed, and her strength renewed. Their eyes met, a newfound depth to their connection humming between them. The moment was shattered by a primal roar. A new figure entered the fray, a being so genetically twisted that it barely resembled any known species. Its muscles rippled beneath iridescent scales, wickedly curved claws extending from each limb. "Dr. Xanthi," Mira breathed, recognizing the station's chief scientist from their intelligence briefings. The hybrid scientist's eyes narrowed, assessing the threat before her. With a gesture, she activated the station's ultimate defense system. The air shimmered as millions of nanobots filled the chamber, their microscopic forms designed to break down any unauthorized organic matter. Holmes felt the tiny machines impacting his armor, draining its power at an alarming rate. Through the empathic network, he sensed the same happening to the rest of the strike force. "We need to shut down that swarm," he shouted, already moving toward the control terminal at the far end of the room. Mira was right beside him, their movements so perfectly synchronized that they seemed to flow around the attacking nanobots. Dr. Xanthi intercepted them, her hybrid form allowing her to move with impossible speed and agility. She lashed out, her claws leaving deep gouges in Holmes's armor. But Holmes and Mira were beyond such physical limitations now. Their deepened bond allowed them to anticipate and counter each of Dr. Xanthi's attacks, moving as a single entity with 4 arms and 4 legs. As they battled the hybrid scientist, Holmes became aware of a new presence in their shared consciousness. Mira had tapped into her royal Akamarian abilities, interfacing directly with the station's systems. Through her, Holmes could sense the station's rapidly failing integrity. "The self-destruct sequence has been activated," Mira communicated silently. "We have minutes before this entire station is vaporized." Holmes's mind raced, formulating and discarding plans in microseconds. They needed to secure the genetic data, disable the nanobot swarm, and evacuate, all while fending off Dr. Xanthi and her seemingly endless supply of hybrid minions. As if sensing his thoughts, Mira's presence in his mind intensified. Together they began a complex dance of physical and mental actions. While their bodies fought Dr. Xanthi, their shared consciousness worked to extract the critical data and search for a way to delay the self-destruct sequence. The chamber descended into chaos as the artificial gravity began to fail. Objects floated freely, complicating their movements and adding another layer of challenge to their already desperate situation. Through it all, Holmes and Mira remained locked in their deadly dance with Dr. Xanthi, each second bringing them closer to either victory or annihilation. Annihilation. Time seemed to slow as Holmes made his decision. "Mira, the data terminal," he shouted, both aloud and through their link. In perfect synchronization, they disengaged from Dr. Xanthi. Holmes spun, using his armor's enhanced strength to hurl the hybrid scientist across the room. Mira launched herself towards the terminal, her fingers flying over the controls. As Dr. Xanthi recovered, Holmes positioned himself between her and Mira. Through their bond, he felt Mira's progress, a furious race against time as she worked to extract the vital genetic data and abort the self-destruct sequence. "Harper, status on that bulkhead?" Holmes demanded over the comm. "Almost there, Captain," came the strained reply. The chamber shuddered, artificial gravity fluctuating wildly. Holmes found himself suddenly weightless, then slammed to the floor as gravity reasserted itself. Dr. Xanthi used the moment of disorientation to her advantage, closing the distance between them with inhuman speed. But Holmes was ready. Drawing on Mira's combat instincts, he met the hybrid scientist's charge with a series of swift, precise strikes. Each blow was calculated to exploit the weaknesses in her genetically modified form. "Got it!" Mira's triumphant cry echoed through the room. Data secured. Self-destruct aborted. At that moment, the security bulkhead groaned open. Harper and Lyra burst in, weapons at the ready. "Time to go," Holmes ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos surrounding them. As one, the strike force moved towards the exit. Dr. Xanthi, realizing her plans were unraveling, let out an inhuman shriek of rage. She lunged at Holmes, her claws tearing through his already damaged armor. Pain lanced through Holmes' body, amplified by the neural interface. Through their link, he felt Mira's answering surge of fury and concern. Without hesitation, she turned back, her royal Acamarian abilities manifesting in a burst of psychic energy that sent Dr. Xanthi reeling. Staggering, Holmes allowed Mira to support him as they made their escape. The space station's corridors were a blur of emergency lights and blaring alarms as they raced toward the Shadowhawk. They burst into the docking bay, the ship's engines already humming to life under Harper's remote command. As they boarded, Holmes felt the familiar vibration of the Shadowhawk's quantum drive engaging. "All aboard," Lyra confirmed, sealing the airlock behind them. With a lurch, the Shadowhawk detached from the station. Through the view screen, Holmes watched as the massive structure receded into the distance, its once pristine surface now scarred and battered from their incursion. As the adrenaline of battle faded, Holmes became acutely aware of the changes wrought by their deepened bond. Mira's presence in his mind was a constant, comforting warmth, their thoughts and emotions intertwined in ways he couldn't fully comprehend. "Setting course for the Alliance base on Lunar Outpost 7, Harper announced from the pilot's seat. Holmes nodded, then turned to Mira. Her alien features were etched with concern as she examined his injuries. "We need to get you to medical," she said, her voice soft but insistent. He started to protest, but the look in her eyes, a mixture of dedication and something deeper, more intimate, silenced him. With a nod, he allowed her to guide him to the ship's small med bay. As Mira tended to his wounds, Holmes felt the Shadowhawk jump to FTL. The stars outside the viewport blurred into streaks of light, carrying them away from the genetic ascendancy's stronghold and towards the relative safety of Alliance space. The journey passed in a haze of muted pain and shared consciousness. Holmes and Mira remained in constant mental contact, their enhanced link allowing them to communicate without words. They relived the mission together, analyzing their performance and marveling at the new depths of their connection. When the Shadowhawk finally dropped out of FTL near Lunar Outpost 7, Holmes felt a mix of relief and apprehension. They had succeeded in their mission, but at what cost? The changes to their bond, the stolen genetic data, the implications of the Ascendancy's research, all of it would have far-reaching consequences. As the ship docked with the outpost, Holmes and Mira stood side by side on the bridge. Through the view screen, they could see a welcoming committee assembling in the hangar bay. Medical staff stood ready to receive the rescued prisoners, while Alliance officials waited to debrief the strike force. "Whatever happens next," Mira said, her tail brushing against Holmes's leg, "we face it together." Holmes nodded, feeling the truth of her words resonate through their shared consciousness. As the airlock cycled open, they stepped forward as one, ready to confront the challenges that lay ahead. The moment they exited the Shadowhawk, they were engulfed in a flurry of activity. Medical teams rushed past them, focusing on the rescued prisoners who looked dazed and disoriented as they stumbled out of the ship. Holmes and Mira's enhanced empathic link allowed them to sense the swirling emotions, relief, fear, confusion, emanating from the former captives. Dr. Alara, the Alliance's chief geneticist, approached them with quick, purposeful strides. Her sharp eyes took in the synchronized movements of Holmes and Mira, the way they seemed to anticipate each other's actions without a word spoken between them. "Captain Holmes, Queen Mira," she greeted them, her voice tinged with both excitement and concern. "I'm glad to see you've returned safely. However, I must admit I'm intrigued by what I'm observing between you two. Your connection seems to have intensified beyond our initial projections." Holmes felt a flicker of unease through his link with Mira. "We've experienced some unexpected developments," he admitted cautiously. Dr. Alara's expression grew serious. "I see. We'll need to run a full battery of tests to understand the extent of these changes. I'm concerned about potential long-term effects on your individual identities." Before they could respond, a group of Alliance leaders approached, their faces grim with anticipation. "Captain, Your Majesty," the lead official said, "we need a full debriefing immediately. The data you've recovered could be crucial to our efforts against the genetic ascendancy." As they were ushered towards the briefing room, Holmes caught sight of Lieutenant Harper organizing the handover of the rescued prisoners to the medical staff. The diversity of species represented among the captives was striking, a testament to the far-reaching nature of the ascendancy's operations. The debriefing was intense and lengthy. Holmes and Mira took turns explaining their findings, their words overlapping and complementing each other in a way that seemed to unsettle some of the Alliance officials. When they described the advanced hybrids they had encountered and the scale of the Ascendancy's plans, a palpable sense of dread filled the room. "This changes everything," one of the admirals muttered, his face ashen. "We need to accelerate our own research programs immediately. We can't afford to fall behind." As the implications of their mission sank in, Holmes became aware of a growing tension in the room. Some of the human officials were eyeing him and Mira with barely concealed suspicion, while others seemed fascinated by their enhanced connection. The debriefing was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Alara, her expression a mix of excitement and concern. "I've completed my initial analysis of the genetic data," she announced. "What I've found is unprecedented." All eyes turned to her as she activated a holographic display. "The Ascendancy has developed a method to accelerate evolutionary processes," she explained, gesturing to the complex genetic structures floating before them. "They can potentially create new hybrid species in weeks, rather than generations." The room erupted into worried murmurs. Holmes felt Mira's alarm echoing his own through their link. The implications were staggering. If the Ascendancy could produce advanced hybrids at such a rate, the entire balance of power in the galaxy could shift in a matter of months. "There's more," Dr. Alara continued, her gaze fixed on Holmes and Mira. "Your enhanced empathic link, it's having an effect on your genetic structure. You're slowly developing a unique human Acamarian hybrid DNA." The revelation sent a shock wave through the room. Holmes felt Mira's tail wrap around his leg, a gesture of comfort and solidarity. Through their bond, he sensed her purpose to face whatever challenges this new development might bring. As the Alliance leaders argued about the best course of action, Dr. Alara approached Holmes and Mira. "I'd like to run some tests," she said quietly. "Your condition could provide invaluable insights into combating the Ascendancy's hybrids." Holmes and Mira exchanged a glance, their shared consciousness weighing the proposal. After a moment, they nodded in unison. "We'll do whatever it takes to help the Alliance," Holmes said, speaking for both of them. As they followed Dr. Alara towards the medical bay, Holmes became acutely aware of the eyes following them. The unique nature of their bond, once a closely guarded secret, was now the subject of intense scrutiny. He could sense the mixture of hope and fear their condition inspired in those around them. In the sterile confines of the medical bay, Holmes and Mira submitted to a battery of tests: brain scans, genetic analysis, physical examinations. Each procedure seemed to raise more questions than answers. Through it all, their empathic link remained strong, a constant source of comfort and strength. As Dr. Alara studied the results, her expression grew increasingly excited. "This is remarkable," she murmured almost to herself. "The level of genetic integration, the neural synchronization, it's like nothing we've ever seen before." Holmes felt a flutter of apprehension through his link with Mira. "What does this mean for us?" she asked, her tail twitching nervously. Dr. Alara looked up, her eyes bright with awe-inspiring enthusiasm. "It means," she said slowly, "that you two might hold the key to creating a new breed of hybrid soldiers, ones born of willing participants, not forced experimentation." The implications of her words hung heavy in the air. Holmes and Mira's eyes met, a silent conversation passing between them. They stood at the precipice of a new frontier, one that could either save the Alliance or lead them down a path uncomfortably similar to their enemies. As they grappled with this new reality, alarms suddenly blared throughout the base. "All personnel to battle stations," a voice announced over the intercom. "Unidentified ships approaching. This is not a drill." Holmes and Mira moved as one, their enhanced abilities kicking into high gear. As they raced towards the command center, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Two minds, two species, united in a bond that transcended the boundaries of their individual selves. Natures. The alarms blaring throughout the base jolted Holmes and Mira into action. As they raced towards the command center, the corridor filled with personnel rushing to their stations. The pair moved in perfect synchronization, their enhanced link allowing them to navigate the chaos with fluid efficiency. Upon entering the command center, they were greeted by a flurry of activity. Holographic displays flickered with incoming data, showcasing the approaching unidentified ships. "Report," Holmes demanded, his voice cutting through the din. Admiral Zhao turned to face them, his expression grim. "Multiple vessels, unknown configuration. They're not responding to hails and are on an intercept course." As the situation unfolded, the base's defenses engaged the mysterious ships. The battle was brief but intense, ending with the intruders retreating into FTL. In the aftermath, the Alliance leadership convened an emergency meeting to discuss the implications of the attack and the potential of using Holmes and Mira's unique bond as a template for a new breed of hybrid soldiers. The meeting room buzzed with tension as various faction leaders argued their positions. Dr. Alara stood at the front, presenting her findings on Holmes and Mira's genetic melding. "The potential benefits are undeniable," she explained, gesturing to the holographic display of their DNA. "Their enhanced abilities could give us a significant advantage against the genetic ascendancy." "At what cost?" countered a human representative. "We'd be no better than the enemy if we start manipulating our own people's genetics." The debate raged on, with both sides presenting compelling arguments. Holmes and Mira observed silently, their linked minds processing the implications of each point raised. Suddenly, a priority message flashed across the main screen, silencing the room. A distress call from a remote human colony, under attack by the genetic ascendancy. The footage showed glimpses of the attacking force, hybrids more advanced than any they'd encountered before. The mood in the room shifted instantly from theoretical debate to urgent action. Admiral Zhao turned to Holmes and Mira. "We need to respond immediately. Your enhanced abilities could be crucial in gathering intelligence and potentially rescuing survivors." Without hesitation, Holmes and Mira volunteered to lead a small team to the attacked colony. As they left to prepare for the mission, Dr. Alara intercepted them. "Before you go, I need to stabilize your genetic melding," she insisted, ushering them toward the medical bay. "It could enhance your abilities even further." The procedure was intense. As specialized nanobots were injected into their bloodstreams, Holmes and Mira experienced a flood of shared memories and sensations. Their minds intertwined even more deeply, boundaries blurring until it was difficult to distinguish where one consciousness ended and the other began. As they recovered from the treatment, Lieutenant Harper and Lyra approached them. "Captain, Your Majesty," Harper began, his voice tinged with purpose, "Lyra and we want to undergo the procedure too. We've seen what it's done for you, and we believe it could make us more effective in the field." Holmes studied them for a moment, sensing the grit in their stance. He nodded. "Understood. Dr. Alara, please proceed with the treatment for Lieutenant Harper and Lyra." With their team assembled and enhanced, they boarded the Phantom, a cutting-edge stealth ship designed for covert operations. As they approached the attack colony, the massive form of a genetic ascendancy warship loomed in orbit. "Engaging cloaking systems," Harper announced from the pilot's seat. Holmes and Mira stood at the command console, their linked minds interfacing directly with the ship's systems. Together, they guided the Phantom through the enemy's sensor net, expertly avoiding detection. They landed on the outskirts of the main settlement, the ship's stealth systems masking their arrival. As they disembarked, the devastation was immediately apparent. Buildings lay in ruins, smoke rising from still smoldering fires. Using their enhanced senses, Holmes and Mira led the team through the wreckage. They discovered small groups of survivors hiding in underground bunkers, terrified but alive. They came out of nowhere, one survivor recounted, her voice shaking. They were beautiful, but wrong. So fast, so strong. Nothing we did could stop them. As they gathered intelligence from the survivors, Holmes and Mira's empathic link picked up traces of residual energy. Following these psychic breadcrumbs, they led the team to an abandoned mining facility on the outskirts of the colony. Hidden within the facility was a genetic ascendancy outpost. As they observed from a concealed position, a transport arrived carrying captured colonists. The prisoners were herded into the facility, their faces etched with fear. Holmes and Mira exchanged a glance, their shared consciousness weighing the risks against the moral imperative to act. Without needing to speak, they formulated a plan. Using their deepened empathic link, they coordinated a multi-pronged assault on the outpost. Harper and Lyra, their own connection now enhanced, moved with unprecedented synchronization as they provided covering fire. As they fought their way through the facility, Holmes and Mira encountered one of the advanced hybrid soldiers. The creature was a marvel of genetic engineering, its movements a blur of inhuman speed and grace. The battle pushed them to their limits, forcing them to draw even more deeply on their shared consciousness. In a moment of desperation, something extraordinary happened. Their physical forms began to merge, combining into a single entity that possessed the strengths of both species. This new merged form was a match for the advanced hybrid. With lightning-fast reflexes and incredible strength, they managed to overpower and incapacitate their opponent. As the merged forms separated, Holmes and Mira found themselves physically and mentally drained. But there was no time to rest. They secured the facility, rescued the captured colonists, and retrieved valuable data on the Ascendancy's latest genetic advancements. With their mission complete, the team prepared to evacuate. As they helped the rescued colonists board the Phantom, Holmes and Mira took a moment to process what had happened. That merging, Mira began, her tail twitching with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Holmes nodded, understanding her unspoken thoughts. It could be the key to combating these new hybrids, but the implications... Their conversation was cut short as Harper approached, his expression urgent. Captain, we've received a priority message from command. They're requesting our immediate return. As the Phantom lifted off, cloaking systems engaged, Holmes and Mira stood side by side on the bridge. Through the view screen, they watched the ravaged colony recede into the distance. Their mission had been successful, but they both knew that this was only the beginning of a new, more complex phase in their fight against the genetic ascendancy. The ship jumped to FTL, carrying with it the rescued colonists, captured hybrid soldiers, and crucial intelligence. As they hurtled through hyperspace, Holmes and Mira prepared themselves for the challenges that lay ahead. Challenges that would test not only their enhanced abilities, but also the very nature of their evolving bond. The Phantom emerged from hyperspace, its stealth systems engaged as it approached the Alliance's main research facility. As the ship docked, Holmes and Mira exchanged a glance, their linked minds processing the events of their recent mission. Captain Holmes, Queen Mira, please report to Medical Bay immediately. Dr. Alara's voice crackled over the intercom. They made their way through the bustling corridors, acutely aware of the stares and whispers that followed them. News of their temporary physical merger during the battle had spread quickly, sparking both awe and unease among the crew. In the medical bay, Dr. Alara wasted no time in ushering them into separate examination pods. We need to assess the impact of your merger, she explained, her fingers flying over holographic controls. The readings we're getting are extraordinary. As the scans progressed, Holmes felt a surge of anxiety through his link with Mira. He sent a wave of reassurance back, their silent communication a testament to their deepening bond. Hours later, they stood before a holographic display of their DNA, watching in fascination as Dr. Ilara explained her findings. Your genetic structures have further intertwined, she said, her voice tinged with excitement. It's a unique hybrid DNA, combining the best traits of both human and Acamarian physiologies. The implications of this discovery sent ripples through the Alliance's scientific community. Within days, an emergency meeting was convened to discuss the potential of this breakthrough. Holmes and Mira found themselves at the center of a heated debate. Some saw their evolving bond as a key to creating a new generation of soldiers capable of countering the genetic ascendancy's forces. Others expressed concerns about the ethical implications of such genetic manipulation. After hours of intense discussion, a decision was reached. The Alliance leadership approved an expanded program to create more human Acamarian hybrid pairs, albeit on a limited and strictly voluntary basis. Lieutenant Jack Harper and Lyra stepped forward, volunteering to be the first couple to undergo the full hybridization process. Their purpose was evident in the set of their shoulders and the fierce glint in their eyes. As preparations for the hybridization program began, Holmes and Mira were tasked with developing a training regimen for the new hybrid pairs. They threw themselves into the work, designing exercises that focused on strengthening the empathic link between partners and honing their ability to coordinate in combat situations. During a late-night planning session, Holmes found himself distracted by Mira's presence. The soft glow of the holographic displays cast an ethereal light on her features, highlighting the subtle iridescence of her scales. Mira sensed his gaze and turned, her tail curling slightly in a gesture of affection. "We should take a break," she suggested, her mental voice tinged with warmth. They retreated to their shared quarters, a space that had become a sanctuary for them both. As the door closed behind them, the air seemed to crackle with unspoken tension. Without a word, they moved towards each other, drawn by an irresistible force. Their bodies intertwined, scales against skin, in a passionate embrace that transcended typical human or Acamarian experiences. As they joined, their minds merged as well, creating a feedback loop of pleasure and connection that blurred the lines between their individual selves. In the aftermath, they lay entwined, their breathing synchronized. Holmes traced the patterns on Mira's scales, marveling at how familiar and yet alien they felt beneath his fingers. Their moment of peace was interrupted by an urgent message from Admiral Zhao. Intelligence reports had uncovered information about a major genetic ascendancy operation in a nearby star system. Holmes and Mira quickly dressed and made their way to the command center. The main display showed a massive space station under construction, its purpose clear from the schematics. "A mobile breeding and experimentation facility," Admiral Zhao explained, his voice grim. "If they complete this station, it could accelerate their production of advanced hybrids exponentially." The decision was unanimous. The station had to be neutralized. Holmes and Mira were assigned to lead a strike force against the facility, with the newly hybridized Harper and Lyra as part of their team. As they began planning the assault, Dr. Ilara approached them with a proposal. "I've developed an experimental procedure," she said, her eyes bright with the fervor of scientific discovery. "It could potentially enhance your ability to physically merge, allowing you to maintain a unified form for extended periods." Holmes felt a mix of excitement and apprehension through his link with Mira. The potential benefits were clear, but the risks were equally apparent. "What are the potential side effects?" Mira asked, her tail twitching nervously. Dr. Ilara's expression grew serious. "The procedure carries significant risks, including the possibility of permanent fusion or loss of individual identities." Holmes and Mira retreated to a quiet corner to discuss the proposal. Their silent conversation was intense, weighing the potential advantages against the risks. Finally, they reached a decision. "We'll do it," Holmes announced, his voice firm. "If it can help us turn the tide against the ascendancy, it's worth the risk." The experimental enhancement began immediately. Holmes and Mira were subjected to a grueling process that pushed their bodies and minds to their limits. They experienced waves of intense pain and disorientation as their physiologies were further altered to accommodate prolonged merging. Throughout the ordeal, their empathic link deepened even further. They clung to each other mentally, drawing strength and comfort from their shared consciousness. As the procedure neared completion, Dr. Alara guided them through their first controlled merge. Holmes felt his body dissolving, merging with Mira's in a way that was both familiar and entirely new. When the process stabilized, they stood as a single entity, a perfect fusion of human and Acamarian. Their merged form radiated power, its capabilities far beyond what either of them could achieve individually. However, as they explored this new state, they encountered unexpected challenges. Memories began to blur, individual thoughts becoming harder to distinguish. With growing alarm, they realized the potential long-term effects on their identities. Working closely with Dr. Alara, they developed techniques for maintaining their sense of self while merged. It was a delicate balance, preserving their unique perspectives while harnessing the full potential of their unified form. As the launch date for their mission approached, Holmes and Mira led their strike force through intensive training exercises. The team's performance improved rapidly, showcasing the potential of human-Acamarian hybrid pairs in combat situations. On the eve of their departure, Holmes and Mira stood on the observation deck, watching as final preparations were made on their stealth ship. The weight of their responsibility settled heavily upon them, tempered by the strength of their bond. Without a word, they joined hands, their fingers intertwining. As one, they turned and walked towards the docking bay, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them in their mission against the Genetic Ascendancy's mobile breeding station. As the docking clamps disengaged, the Phantom glided silently into the void of space, its stealth systems fully engaged. Inside the ship, Holmes and Mira stood side by side on the bridge, their bodies still humming with residual energy from their recent merging. Through the view screen, they watched as the massive structure of the Genetic Ascendancy's mobile breeding station loomed before them, its complex network of modules and research facilities stretching as far as the eye could see. Sensors detecting a high-density field ahead, Lieutenant Harper reported from his station, his voice tense. It appears to be a microscopic sensor grid designed to detect even the slightest molecular disturbances. Mira's tail twitched with nervous energy. "Our stealth systems won't be enough to get us through undetected," she said, her mind already racing through potential solutions. Holmes nodded, reaching out to grasp Mira's hand. Without a word, they closed their eyes, drawing on their enhanced abilities. A shimmering energy field began to form around the ship, mimicking the surrounding space with perfect precision. "Incredible," Dr. Alara whispered, her eyes fixed on the sensor readouts. "They're creating a localized field that's indistinguishable from the surrounding space." With painstaking care, Holmes and Mira guided the Phantom through the sensor grid. Beads of sweat formed on Holmes's forehead, while Mira's scales took on a faint, iridescent glow from the effort. After what felt like an eternity, they emerged on the other side, the sensor grid now behind them. "We're through," Harper announced, relief evident in his voice. "No signs of detection." As they approached the station's outer hull, Holmes addressed the strike force. "Remember your objectives. Harper and Lyra, you're on power core sabotage. Commander Vasquez and Zara focus on rescuing the test subjects and gathering intelligence. Mira and I will lead the primary assault. Stay in constant communication and be prepared for anything." The Phantom docked with the station, its advanced systems bypassing the external security protocols. As the airlock cycled, Holmes and Mira shared a final look before initiating their merge. Their bodies seemed to shimmer and flow together, forming a single powerful hybrid entity that radiated strength and agility. The strike force moved swiftly through the station's corridors, their path cleared by the merged Holmes-Mira entity. They encountered their first wave of resistance in a large open chamber filled with research equipment. Advanced hybrid defenders poured into the room, their movements a blur of inhuman speed and precision. The merged Holmes-Mira form reacted with equal swiftness, anticipating attacks before they came and countering with devastating efficiency. As Harper and Lyra broke off towards the power core, they encountered a series of biometric security checkpoints. "These require genetic samples from multiple species," Lyra observed, her tail lashing with frustration. Harper grinned, a plan already forming. "Good thing we've got a bit of everything, then." They pressed their hands to the scanner, their hybrid physiology fooling the system into granting access. However, the process left them momentarily drained, their bodies struggling to recover from the genetic manipulation. Meanwhile, Commander Vasquez and Zara made steady progress through the detention levels. They moved from cell to cell, freeing bewildered and terrified test subjects of various species. As they worked, Zara's acute hearing picked up a faint voice from a heavily secured section. "Help! Is anyone there?" The voice was weak but unmistakably human. Vasquez and Zara exchanged a glance before moving to investigate. Behind a reinforced door, they found a haggard woman in a tattered lab coat. Her eyes widened as she saw the hybrid pair. "Dr. Ariana Bennett," she introduced herself, her voice hoarse. "I thought I was the only one left." As they escorted Dr. Bennett and the other rescued prisoners towards the extraction point, alarms began to blare throughout the station. Swarms of combat drones filled the air, while robotic sentries converged on their position from all directions. In the central hub, the merged Holmes-Mira entity faced its greatest challenge yet. Dr. Xander Vex, the station's lead scientist, stood before them, his body a grotesque testament to the Ascendancy's experiments. "Fascinating," Vex mused, his mismatched eyes gleaming with scientific curiosity. "You've achieved a level of hybridization I didn't think possible outside our labs. Perhaps we're not so different after all." The merged entity didn't respond with words. Instead, it launched into action, its movements a perfect blend of human strategy and Acamarian grace. Vex countered with equal skill, his body rapidly adapting to each attack. As the battle raged on, Holmes and Mira felt the strain of maintaining their merged form. Their consciousnesses began to waver, individual thoughts and memories threatening to break through the unified whole. With a mental effort that bordered on agony, they forced themselves to separate. Holmes stumbled backwards, gasping for breath, while Mira's tail lashed out to steady herself. Vex seized the opportunity, lunging forward with impossible speed. But even separated, Holmes and Mira's bond remained unbroken. Moving in perfect synchronization, they dodged the attack and countered with a devastating combination of blows that sent Vex reeling. Throughout the station, the other teams faced their own challenges. Harper and Lyra, having successfully sabotaged the power core, fought their way through waves of Ascendancy soldiers. Their brief experience with merging had given them new insights, and they moved with a level of coordination that surprised even themselves. As the station systems began to fail, Commander Vasquez and Zara led their group of rescued prisoners towards the Phantom. They encountered heavy resistance, with Ascendancy forces determined to prevent their escape. Vasquez and Zara put their hybrid training to the test, their enhanced strength and agility proving crucial in protecting the vulnerable escapees. With alarms blaring and the station shuddering around them, the strike force converged on the extraction point. They fought through the final waves of Ascendancy reinforcements, their hybrid abilities giving them the edge needed to overcome the overwhelming numbers. As they reached the Phantom, a final obstacle presented itself. The station's docking clamps malfunctioned, trapping the vessel in place. Holmes and Mira, exhausted from their repeated merging and intense combat, shared a look of steadfast perseverance. "We have to try one more merge," Holmes said, his voice ragged. "It's the only way to generate enough power to break free." Mira nodded, her scales dulled with fatigue. "The risks—" "I know," Holmes interrupted, "but we don't have a choice." As the rest of the strike force secured themselves and the rescued prisoners aboard the Phantom, Holmes and Mira stood at the airlock. They clasped hands, their eyes locked on each other as they began the dangerous process of merging one final time. The merged entity that formed radiated an intensity of energy unlike anything they had experienced before. With a sound that was part scream and part roar, they channeled this unprecedented power into the docking clamps. The metal groaned and buckled under the assault. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed as though even this wouldn't be enough. Then, with a deafening crack, the clamps shattered. The Phantom lurched free, its engines roaring to life as it sped away from the disintegrating station. On the bridge, the strike force watched in awe as the massive structure began to break apart behind them. But their victory was tempered with uncertainty. In the airlock, the merged form of Holmes and Mira remained motionless, their fate hanging in the balance as the Phantom carried them into the depths of space. space as the Phantom raced away from the collapsing station. "Medical team to the airlock, now!" Dr. Alara's voice crackled over the intercom, urgency evident in her tone. "Prepare for immediate genetic stabilization procedures." As the ship's engines hummed with exertion, the medical team rushed to the airlock. The sight that greeted them was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The merged form of Holmes and Mira pulsed with energy, their combined body flickering between human, Acamarian, and hybrid states. Dr. Alara pushed through the gathering crowd, her eyes widening as she took in the readings on her handheld scanner. "Their genetic structures are destabilizing at an alarming rate," she announced, her fingers flying over the device's controls. "We need to get them to the medical bay immediately." The team carefully maneuvered the merged entity onto a hover stretcher, the air crackling with energy around them. As they moved through the ship's corridors, crew members pressed themselves against the walls, watching with a mixture of fascination and fear. In the medical bay, Dr. Ilara and her team worked feverishly, their movements precise and coordinated. Holographic displays filled the air, showing the rapidly shifting genetic makeup of the merged form. "Initiating neural recalibration sequence," one of the technicians called out, his hands dancing over a complex array of controls. Dr. Alara nodded, her attention focused on a swirling display of DNA strands. "Begin targeted genetic manipulation. We need to separate their structures without causing cellular collapse." Hours passed, the tension in the medical bay palpable as the team fought to stabilize Holmes and Mira. Finally, with a burst of energy that sent equipment flying, the merged forms separated into two distinct bodies. "Vital signs stabilizing," a nurse reported, relief evident in her voice. Dr. Alara sagged against a nearby console, exhaustion etched on her face. "Get them into the regeneration pods," she ordered, "and keep a constant watch on their genetic markers. We're not out of the woods yet." As Holmes and Mira were carefully placed into the translucent pods, the rest of the strike force gathered in the ship's briefing room. Lieutenant Harper, his scales still bearing scorch marks from the mission, stood at the head of the table. "The attack on the breeding station was a success," he began, his voice grave despite the victory. "We've dealt a significant blow to the genetic ascendancy's operations. However, the cost—" He trailed off, glancing towards the medical bay. Lyra stepped forward, her tail twitching with nervous energy. "We managed to extract valuable data and genetic samples," she reported, bringing up a holographic display of complex molecular structures. "Our scientists are already beginning analysis." Commander Vasquez nodded, her expression thoughtful. "And what of the rescued prisoners?" "Most are being treated for various degrees of genetic manipulation," Lyra answered. "But there's one who might be of particular interest. Dr. Ariana Bennett, a human geneticist. She's offered to assist in our research efforts." As if on cue, the door slid open, revealing a gaunt woman with haunted eyes. Dr. Bennett stepped into the room, her gaze sweeping over the assembled hybrids. "I've seen things in that station," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Experiments that push the boundaries of what we thought possible. The ascendancy is on the verge of creating hybrids that can manipulate the very fabric of reality." A murmur of concern rippled through the room. Commander Vasquez leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "Can you help us understand their methods? Find a way to counter them?" Dr. Bennett nodded slowly. "I believe so, but we'll need to act quickly. The ascendancy won't stay idle for long." As the briefing continued, Dr. Alara monitored Holmes and Mira's vital signs in the medical bay. Their genetic structures continued to fluctuate, shifting between human, Acamarian, and hybrid states. "Fascinating," she murmured, studying the readouts. "It's as if their prolonged merge has created a new form of genetic plasticity." She began formulating a theory, her mind racing with possibilities. If they could harness this ability, control it. In the regeneration pods, Holmes and Mira drifted in a state between consciousness and dreams. Their minds, still intimately connected, shared flashes of memories and emotions. Holmes saw glimpses of Mira's childhood on her homeworld, felt the weight of her responsibilities as queen. Mira experienced the thrill of Holmes's early days as a fighter pilot, the loneliness of his self-imposed exile. As days passed, the Alliance base buzzed with activity. Dr. Bennett worked tirelessly with the science team, unraveling the secrets hidden in the stolen genetic data. In the training facilities, hybrid pairs pushed themselves to new limits, inspired by the unprecedented fusion achieved by Holmes and Mira. Commander Vasquez and Zara prepared for a series of high-risk reconnaissance missions, their movements in perfect sync as they ran through combat simulations. Lieutenant Harper and Lyra assisted in the analysis of the Ascendancy's technology, their unique perspectives proving invaluable. In the medical bay, Dr. Ilara presented her proposal to the Alliance leadership. A specialized chamber, she explained, gesturing to a holographic blueprint, one that would allow Holmes and Mira to safely merge and separate at will. It could be the key to unlocking the full potential of their hybrid abilities. The Alliance leaders exchanged uneasy glances. "The risks," one began, "are significant," Dr. Ilara acknowledged, "but so are the potential benefits. This could give us the edge we need against the Ascendancy." After hours of debate, the proposal was approved. Construction began immediately, the chamber taking shape under the watchful eyes of Dr. Ilara and her team. As the days turned to weeks, Holmes and Mira showed signs of recovery. Their eyes fluttered open, taking in the familiar surroundings of the medical bay. But as they gazed at each other, a new understanding passed between them. They were changed, their bond deeper than ever before. Dr. Ilara approached their beds, her face a mixture of concern and excitement. "How are you feeling?" she asked, running a scanner over their bodies. Holmes flexed his hand, watching as his skin shimmered with a faint, scale-like pattern. "Different," he answered, his voice hoarse from disuse. "But whole." Mira nodded in agreement, her tail curling around the edge of the bed. "We are ourselves," she said softly, "and yet we are more." Dr. Ilara smiled, relief evident in her expression. "We have much to discuss," she said, helping them to sit up. "The Ascendancy is on the move, and we've made some remarkable discoveries. But first, there's something I need to show you." She led them to a sealed chamber, its walls humming with energy. As the door slid open, Holmes and Mira felt a familiar pull, their bodies instinctively moving closer together. "This," Dr. Ilara explained, "is the key to controlling your new abilities, and possibly to turning the tide of this war." Holmes and Mira exchanged a look, a silent understanding passing between them. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as individuals, as partners, and as something entirely new. Holmes and Mira stood before the specialized chamber, their bodies humming with anticipation. Dr. Ilara's creation promised a new level of control over their hybrid abilities, but it also represented a step into the unknown. "Are you ready?" Dr. Ilara asked, her finger hovering over the activation switch. Holmes glanced at Mira, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "We are," he answered for both of them. The chamber came to life with a low hum, its walls pulsing with energy. Holmes and Mira stepped inside, their hands instinctively finding each other. As the door sealed shut, they felt the familiar pull of their bodies merging. This time, however, the process was different. Instead of the chaotic rush of energy they had experienced before, the merge felt controlled, precise. Their minds melded seamlessly, thoughts and memories flowing between them like water. In the observation room, Dr. Ilara watched the readings with growing excitement. "Incredible," she murmured. "Their genetic structures are perfectly aligned, no signs of instability." Days turned into weeks as Holmes and Mira underwent intensive training in the chamber. They learned to merge and separate at will, their control growing stronger with each session. But it was during one particularly grueling exercise that they made a startling discovery. As they pushed their merged form to its limits, Holmes felt a strange sensation ripple across their shared skin. He focused on the feeling, and suddenly, their appearance began to change. Scales shifted and reformed, taking on the texture and color of the chamber walls. Mira's surprise echoed through their shared consciousness. "Are we camouflaging?" Dr. Ilara's voice crackled over the intercom, her excitement palpable. "This is extraordinary. You've developed adaptive camouflage abilities. This could revolutionize our infiltration tactics against the Ascendancy." The discovery sparked a flurry of activity within the Alliance. Dr. Alara proposed incorporating this new ability into the upcoming mission, presenting her plan to the Leadership Council. With their camouflage abilities, Holmes and Mira could infiltrate even the most secure Ascendancy facilities, she explained, gesturing to a holographic display of a heavily fortified compound. They could potentially disguise themselves as advanced hybrid guards, bypassing security measures that would stop any other infiltrators. The council members exchanged looks of both hope and concern. Commander Vasquez leaned forward, her expression grave. The risks are considerable. If they're discovered... We understand the risks, Holmes interjected, stepping forward with Mira, but we also understand the potential rewards. This could be our best chance to strike at the heart of the Ascendancy's operations. After hours of debate, the council approved the plan. Holmes and Mira's training intensified, focusing on maintaining their merge form for extended periods while using their camouflage abilities. As they worked to perfect their new skills, Lieutenant Harper and Lyra led a series of raids on smaller Ascendancy outposts. These missions served a dual purpose, gathering intelligence and testing the countermeasures developed from Dr. Bennett's research. Harper crouched behind a fallen pillar, his scales blending seamlessly with the rubble. Beside him, Lyra's tail twitched with anticipation. Team 2 in position, she whispered into her comm unit. Copy that, came the reply. Initiating countermeasure deployment in 3, 2, 1. A wave of energy pulsed through the air. The Ascendancy hybrids guarding the outpost stumbled, their enhanced abilities faltering. Harper and Lyra burst from cover, their own hybrid strengths unaffected by the countermeasure. The raid was over in minutes, with the Ascendancy forces neutralized and valuable data secured. As they regrouped, Harper couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. It worked, he said, meeting Lyra's gaze. We might actually have a chance against them now. Back at the Alliance base, Holmes and Mira pushed themselves to new limits in the specialized chamber. They practiced maintaining their merge form for hours at a time, all while constantly shifting their appearance to match various Ascendancy hybrid types. During one particularly intense session, something changed. Their merged consciousness expanded, giving them a deeper understanding of the genetic principles underlying their hybrid nature. With this new insight, they found they could fine-tune their abilities with unprecedented precision. Dr. Alara watched in awe as Holmes and Mira demonstrated their enhanced control. Your camouflage is perfect, she said, studying the readings on her tablet. I can barely detect any genetic variants from a true Ascendancy hybrid. As the date for the major offensive approached, the Alliance received crucial intelligence. A hidden Ascendancy research facility had been located within an asteroid field, believed to be the epicenter of their most advanced genetic experiments. Commander Vasquez called an emergency meeting of the Alliance leadership. This facility is our primary target, she announced, bringing up a holographic map of the asteroid field. But its defenses are unlike anything we've encountered before. She nodded to Zara, who stepped forward to brief the council on their reconnaissance findings. The facility is protected by a complex network of sensor arrays and automated defense systems, Zara explained. A direct assault would be suicide. All eyes turned to Holmes and Mira. The success of the entire offensive would hinge on their ability to infiltrate the facility undetected. As the final preparations began, Dr. Alara pulled Holmes and Mira aside. Her expression was troubled as she showed them their latest genetic scans. Your frequent merging is causing changes in your individual genetic structure, she explained. Your bodies are adapting to the hybrid state as the new baseline. While this enhances your abilities, it also raises concerns about your ability to fully separate in the future. Holmes and Mira exchanged a long look, silently communicating in a way that had become second nature to them. Finally, Holmes spoke for both of them. We understand the risks, Doctor, but we're committed to seeing this through. Our abilities might be the key to ending this war. In the days leading up to the mission, Holmes and Mira spent most of their time in their merged form. They fine-tuned their control, pushing the boundaries of their abilities. Their heightened connection led to moments of intense intimacy, both physical and emotional, as they grappled with the possibility that they might never fully separate again. As the launch date arrived, they donned specially designed infiltration suits that complemented their camouflage abilities. Hidden compartments within the suits contain the genetic weapon developed by Dr. Bennett, a virus engineered to disrupt the Ascendancy's most advanced hybrids. In the final briefing, Commander Vasquez outlined their objectives. Infiltrate the facility, access the central database, deploy the weapon, and if possible, sabotage key systems to pave the way for our main assault. The entire offensive hinges on your success. Holmes and Mira boarded their modified stealth shuttle, their minds and bodies united in their hybrid form. As the shuttle detached from the Alliance flagship and headed towards the asteroid field, they reaffirmed their commitment to each other and their mission. The vast expanse of space stretched out before them, dotted with the glittering shapes of asteroids. Somewhere within that field lay their target, and with it, the fate of two species and the galaxy itself. As the asteroid field loomed before them, Holmes and Mira's merged consciousness focused on the task at hand. Their shuttle glided silently through the void, its stealth technology rendering it invisible to the Ascendancy's sensor arrays. Initiating camouflage sequence, Holmes thought, the words echoing in their shared mind. Their hybrid forms shimmered, scales and skin rearranging at the molecular level. Within moments, they had transformed into the spitting image of two high-ranking Ascendancy hybrid guards. As they approached the facility's outer docking area, a terse message crackled over the comm system. Unidentified vessel, transmit docking codes immediately or face termination. Mira's anxiety rippled through their merged consciousness. The docking protocols had changed since their last intelligence briefing. Holmes quickly analyzed the genetic signatures of the nearby guards, their enhanced senses picking up subtle markers in the air. Adjusting our profile, he communicated silently to Mira. Their shared form tingled as they fine-tuned their genetic structure. With a deep breath, they transmitted the modified codes. Seconds ticked by in tense silence. Finally, the docking bay doors slid open. "Proceed to Base 7, came the curt response. As they disembarked, an imposing figure strode towards them. Commander Czar, his piercing gaze scanning them from head to toe. "New arrivals," he growled. "I don't recall being informed of your transfer." Holmes stepped forward, adopting a deferential posture. "Our apologies, Commander. The orders came directly from Central Command. The details were classified." Czar's eyes narrowed. "Something's off about you two." He tapped his wrist computer. "Full genetic scan, now." Holmes and Mira stood still, every fiber of their being focused on maintaining their disguise. As the scan washed over them, they made minute adjustments to their hybrid physiology, matching the expected Ascendancy profile. The scanner beeped, and Czar frowned at the results. "Everything checks out," he muttered, clearly displeased. "Lieutenant Vex," a young hybrid officer hurried over. "Sir? Escort these two to their assigned posts. Keep an eye on them." As they followed Vex deeper into the facility, Holmes and Mira's merged mind raced, mapping out potential routes to the central database. The corridors teemed with advanced hybrid guards, their movements tense and alert. "Security's been tightened since the outpost attacks," Vex explained, misinterpreting their observant gazes. "We're on high alert." They reached a security checkpoint where a stern-faced guard held out a device. Blood samples required for verification. Holmes and Mira exchanged a quick glance. This was the moment of truth. As they pressed their fingers to the sampling pads, they concentrated intensely, manipulating their blood at the cellular level to match Ascendancy profiles. The device hummed, then chimed. "Verified. Proceed." Vex led them to a crowded briefing room where several scientists were engaged in animated discussion. Holmes and Mira listened intently, gleaning crucial information about a new hybrid strain capable of rapid environmental adaptation. Taking advantage of the bustling room, they executed a carefully choreographed maneuver to slip away unnoticed. They moved swiftly through the corridors, their merged consciousness allowing them to anticipate and avoid security patrols. As they neared the central database, a shrill alarm shattered the air. "Intruder alert! All personnel to battle stations." "They've discovered the docking logs," Mira's thoughts raced through their shared mind. "No time for stealth now," Holmes responded. They broke into a sprint, their hybrid physiology pushing them to inhuman speeds. They skidded to a halt before the database chamber's imposing door. A complex biometric lock stood between them and their objective. 3 distinct hybrid genetic profiles were required for entry. We have to risk it, Holmes thought, and Mira's agreement rippled through them. In a feat of extreme genetic manipulation, they split their merged form into 3 distinct entities. The strain was immense. Their shared consciousness stretched to its limits as they struggled to maintain the separate forms. As their trembling hands reached for the lock, heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. Commander Czar rounded the corner, leading a squad of elite guards. His eyes widened in shock as he took in the scene. In that crucial moment, Holmes and Mira made their decision. They dropped their disguise, revealing their true nature as a human Acamarian hybrid. The guards faltered, caught off guard by this impossible being. Those precious seconds were all they needed. The lock disengaged with a satisfying click, and they tumbled into the database chamber. The door slammed shut behind them, sealing out the enraged shouts of Commander Czar. Holmes and Mira wasted no time. They located the main terminal and began uploading Dr. Bennett's genetic weapon. As the progress bar inched forward, they scoured the database for additional intelligence. Outside, the sound of energy weapons striking the door grew louder. We don't have much time, Mira thought, her concern pulsing through their link. Suddenly, Holmes stumbled upon a critical piece of information. The newest hybrid strains, he communicated urgently. They have a fail-safe. It could neutralize our weapon. The implications hit them both simultaneously. The entire mission, the Alliance's planned offensive, it could all be for nothing. The door groaned, beginning to give way under the relentless assault. Holmes and Mira stood before the terminal, their merged form trembling from the prolonged exertion. The upload was nearly complete, but with this new information, would it even matter? They faced an impossible choice: abort the upload and flee with the intelligence they'd gathered, or risk capture by staying to modify the weapon. The fate of the war against the genetic ascendancy hung in the balance. As the chamber door began to buckle, Holmes and Mira steeled themselves for the decision that would shape the future of humanity and Acamarians alike. Holmes and Mira locked eyes, their merged consciousness pulsing with shared determination. Without a word, they turned back to the terminal, fingers flying across the holographic interface. We can't let this fail-safe render our efforts useless, Holmes communicated through their link. We have to adapt the weapon. Mira's scientific knowledge surged to the forefront of their shared mind. If we recalibrate the viral structure to target the fail-safe's genetic markers, they worked in perfect synchronicity, their merged form allowing them to process and manipulate the complex genetic code at lightning speed. The pounding on the door grew more intense, the metal groaning under the assault. Almost there, Holmes thought, his concentration laser-focused on the rapidly scrolling data. With a final keystroke, the modified weapon began its upload into the Ascendancy systems. The progress bar crept forward agonizingly slowly. A deafening crash announced the breach of the chamber door. Commander Czar burst in, flanked by a squad of elite hybrid guards. Their eyes widened at the sight of Holmes and Mira's true form. "Abomination!" Czar snarled, raising his energy weapon. Holmes and Mira sprang into action, their hybrid physiology granting them superhuman speed and agility. They ducked and weaved through the barrage of energy blasts, using the chamber's equipment as cover. Their merged consciousness allowed them to anticipate each other's movements perfectly. Holmes provided covering fire with a captured weapon, while Mira executed a series of acrobatic maneuvers, taking down 2 guards in quick succession. But the prolonged exertion began to take its toll. Their movements became less fluid, their shared thoughts fragmenting at the edges. Commander Czar, ever observant, noticed their faltering coordination. With a feral grin, he charged forward, his massive frame barreling into their merged form. The impact sent them sprawling, and for a heart-stopping moment, their connection wavered. "No!" Mira cried out, both vocally and mentally, as she felt herself being torn away from Holmes. With a final, violent wrench, their merged forms split apart. Holmes and Mira found themselves separated, sprawled on opposite sides of the chamber. They staggered to their feet, disoriented by the sudden loss of their shared consciousness. Commander Czar loomed over them, triumphant. "You thought you could infiltrate our most secure facility?" He raised his weapon, aiming it at Holmes. Your genetic abomination ends here. Just as he was about to fire, Tsar's body suddenly convulsed. He stumbled, confusion etched across his face. Around the chamber, the other hybrid guards began to twitch and falter. Holmes and Mira exchanged a look of realization. The weapon was working. Taking advantage of the Ascendancy Force's disorientation, Holmes and Mira fought with renewed vigor. Their movements were less coordinated now, but they compensated with their individual strengths and the remnants of their empathic link. Holmes grappled with a faltering guard, using his human adaptability to counter the hybrid's fluctuating abilities. Mira's Acamarian heritage gave her an edge in agility, allowing her to dart between opponents, striking with precision. They battled their way towards the exit, the chamber now a chaos of malfunctioning equipment and destabilized hybrids. Commander Tsar roared in frustration, his once formidable abilities now erratic and unreliable. As they reached the corridor, a familiar face appeared. Lieutenant Vex, the young officer who had escorted them earlier, stood before them with a determined expression. "This way," Vex hissed, gesturing down a side passage. "I can get you out of here." Holmes hesitated, his combat-honed instincts wary of a trap, but Mira, sensing no deception, nodded quickly. "He's genuine," she communicated to Holmes through their weakened link. "We don't have a choice." They followed Vex through a labyrinth of corridors, the sounds of confusion and alarm echoing throughout the facility. The young lieutenant led them to a secondary hangar bay, where a sleek escape vessel sat primed for launch. "I'm with the Resistance," Vex explained hurriedly as they boarded. "I've been waiting for an opportunity like this. Get me out of here and I'll tell your alliance everything I know." As the ship's engines roared to life, Holmes and Mira buckled into the pilot seats. Their hands moved in unison across the controls, muscle memory from their merged state taking over. But as they guided the ship out of the hangar and into the asteroid field, a wave of dizziness washed over them both. Holmes gripped the controls tighter, his vision blurring. Mira gasped, a sharp pain lancing through her abdomen. "Something's wrong," she grimaced. "Our bodies, they're destabilizing." The realization hit them both simultaneously. Their physiology had adapted to the merged state. Separation was tearing them apart at the cellular level. As the ship weaved through the asteroids, pursued by the few functional Ascendancy vessels, Holmes and Mira faced a critical decision. Their eyes met, a lifetime of trust and partnership conveyed in a single glance. "We have to merge again," Holmes said softly. Mira nodded, reaching out to clasp his hand. This time, it might be permanent. With the battle raging around them and their very existence in the balance, Holmes and Mira initiated the merge. The process was more intense than ever before, their very atoms seeming to realign and fuse. In a blinding flash of light and sensation, Holmes' Mira emerged, a single being, perfectly balanced between human and Acamarian traits. Their hands, now steadier than ever, guided the ship with unparalleled skill. As they approached the rendezvous point with the Alliance fleet, Holmes' Mira opened a communication channel. Their merged voice, harmonious and strong, broke through the static. "This is Holmes' Mira to Alliance Command. Mission accomplished. The weapon is deployed, and we have critical intelligence. Prepare for our arrival, and a full debrief on the newest threat to our survival." Species. Their merged voice carried a note of urgency as the ship approached the Alliance fleet. As they docked with the flagship, medical teams rushed to meet them. Dr. Alara, the Alliance's chief geneticist, led the group, her eyes widening at the sight of Holmes' Mira's unified form. "Fascinating," she breathed, running a scanner over their body. "The cellular integration is unlike anything I've seen before. We need to get you to the medbay immediately." Holmes' Mira nodded, their movements fluid and graceful, despite the strain of recent events. As they walked, they briefed Admiral Zhao on the success of their mission and the deployment of the modified weapon. In the medbay, Dr. Alara and her team worked tirelessly, monitoring Holmes' Mira's vital signs and collecting samples. The process was uncomfortable, needles piercing their skin to extract specialized cells. "These cells," Dr. Alara explained, examining a holographic display, "they're producing compounds that could counteract even the most advanced Ascendancy modifications. This could be the key to turning the tide of the war. Holmes' mirror winced as another sample was taken. The discomfort is significant, they said, their voice a harmonious blend of Holmes' deep timbre and Mira's melodic tones. Dr. Alara's face softened with concern. I understand. We'll try to make this as quick as possible. While the medical team worked, Lieutenant Vex underwent intense questioning in a nearby room. Alliance intelligence officers grilled him on every aspect of the Ascendancy's operations. The breeding program, Vex explained, his voice hoarse from hours of talking. It's not just about creating soldiers. They're trying to design the perfect ruling class, beings who can dominate both humans and Acamarians. In the command center, Admiral Zhao coordinated the ongoing battle. Alliance ships pressed their advantage against the weakened Ascendancy forces, their weapons tearing through hulls compromised by the genetic weapon. Sir, a communications officer called out, we're picking up encrypted Ascendancy transmissions. They're activating some kind of contingency plan. Zhao's eyes narrowed. Decode those transmissions. Now. As the battle raged outside, Holmes' Mira struggled with their new existence. Memories and personalities that had once been distinct now swirled together, creating moments of disorientation. It's difficult to separate our thoughts, they confessed to Dr. Alara. Their forms shimmered, features blurring as if unable to settle on a single configuration. Alarmed, Dr. Alara called for a containment chamber. We need to stabilize your molecular structure, she explained as they were carefully moved into the transparent enclosure. This chamber will help regulate your unique physiology. Inside the chamber, Holmes' Mira felt their form begin to stabilize. The conflicting impulses in their minds slowly calmed, allowing them to think more clearly. Dr. Alara worked feverishly, analyzing the data from their samples. If we can synthesize a compound based on these specialized cells, she mused, we might be able to create a treatment to permanently stabilize your condition. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. Admiral Zhao's voice came over the intercom, tense and urgent. All personnel, be on high alert. We've decoded the Ascendancy transmissions. They've activated sleeper agents within Alliance territories. We're dealing with an internal threat. The medbay erupted into controlled chaos as staff prepared for potential casualties. Dr. Alara redoubled her efforts, knowing that Holmes' Mira's stabilized condition could be crucial in the fights to come. In the command center, Zhao quickly assembled a specialized task force. Lieutenant Harper, Lyra, he addressed a human Acamarian pair. I need you to lead a team to hunt down these sleeper agents. Your experience with hybrid abilities makes you our best option. As Harper and Lyra began preparations, Dr. Alara made a breakthrough. She rushed to the containment chamber, holding a vial of iridescent liquid. We've done it, she announced triumphantly. This should stabilize your form permanently. Holmes' Mira eyed the vial, hope and apprehension mingling in their expression. As Dr. Alara administered the treatment, they felt a warm sensation spread through their body. Their form solidified, the shimmering finally ceasing. Stepping out of the chamber, Holmes' Mira flexed their hands, marveling at the newfound stability. We feel whole, they said, their voice strong and clear. Admiral Zhao entered the medbay, his face grim. Holmes' Mira, we need your unique abilities. The sleeper agents are using hybrid techniques we've never encountered before. Will you join Harper and Lyra's task force? Holmes' Mira straightened, their posture reflecting both Holmes' military bearing and Mira's regal poise. We're ready, Admiral, but first we need to prove we can operate effectively in this form. Zhao nodded, leading them to a holographic training room. This simulation will test you against our most advanced Ascendancy hybrid replicas. Show us what you can do. As the simulation began, Holmes' Mira moved with incredible speed and precision. They dodged energy blasts with inhuman agility, their tactical mind processing the battlefield in microseconds. Their hands glowed with Acamarian energy as they unleashed devastating counterattacks. The simulated hybrids fell one by one, unable to match Holmes' Mira's combination of strategic brilliance and raw power. As the final opponent crumpled, the holographic environment faded away. Zhao stood at the entrance, his expression a mix of awe and satisfaction. Impressive. You're cleared for field operations. Report to Lieutenant Harper for your first mission briefing. As Holmes Mira left the training room, reports flooded in of Ascendancy sleeper agents launching coordinated attacks across Alliance worlds. The war had entered a new phase, with the enemy now striking from within. In the mission briefing room, Harper and Lyra welcomed Holmes Mira to the team. We're heading to Nexus Prime, Harper explained, pointing to a holographic map. It's a frontier world and we've detected significant sleeper cell activity there. Lyra added, our mission is to neutralize the cell and gather any intelligence on other sleeper operations. We leave in 1 hour. As they prepared for the mission, Holmes Mira reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. From separate beings to a unified hybrid, they now stood at the forefront of the Alliance's fight for survival. Boarding the stealth shuttle that would take them to Nexus Prime, Holmes Mira felt a surge of readiness. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they were prepared to face them, not as two separate individuals, but as a single, formidable force. Entity ready to tackle the challenges that lay ahead. As the shuttle broke through Nexus Prime's atmosphere, Holmes Mira studied the holographic display of the planet's capital city. Their merged consciousness processed the information with unprecedented speed, identifying potential hotspots for sleeper cell activity. We'll set up our base in the industrial district, Harper said, pointing to a cluster of abandoned warehouses. It's close to the power distribution facility, where we've detected anomalous activity. Lyra nodded, her Acamarian features set in a determined expression. Our priority is to remain undetected. We can't risk alerting the sleeper agents to our presence. The shuttle touched down in a secluded area, its stealth systems ensuring a silent arrival. As they disembarked, Holmes Mira activated their adaptive camouflage, their forms shimmering briefly before blending seamlessly with the surroundings. Impressive, Harper remarked, watching the hybrid entity move with fluid grace. They quickly established their covert base, setting up advanced surveillance equipment and communications arrays. Holmes Mira interfaced directly with the systems, their hybrid physiology allowing for instantaneous data processing. We're detecting unusual energy fluctuations in the main power grid, they reported, their merged voice carrying a note of concern. It could be a sign of sleeper agent interference? Lyra frowned, studying the data. We need to investigate, but we can't risk a direct approach. Holmes Mira, can you use your enhanced abilities to scan the population for ascendancy genetic markers? Holmes Mira nodded, their eyes glowing faintly as they accessed their hybrid capabilities. They extended their consciousness outward, sifting through the genetic signatures of thousands of citizens. Hours passed as they conducted their discrete scan, their body remaining perfectly still while their mind raced through vast amounts of data. Finally, their eyes refocused, and they turned to their teammates. We've identified 3 potential targets, Holmes Mira announced, all working within the main power distribution facility. Their genetic profiles show subtle ascendancy modifications, consistent with sleeper agent enhancements. Harper pulled up a holographic map of the facility. We need a plan to infiltrate and apprehend them without raising alarms. Any ideas? Holmes Mira stepped forward, their forms shifting slightly as they accessed the facility's schematics. I can use my adaptive abilities to bypass security checkpoints. If we time our approach correctly, we can isolate each suspect and neutralize them individually. The team spent the next hour refining their strategy, accounting for various contingencies. As night fell over Nexus Prime, they moved out, their stealth gear rendering them nearly invisible in the shadows. Approaching the power facility, Holmes Mira took point. They placed their hand on the security panel, their hybrid physiology mimicking the genetic signature of an authorized employee. The door slid open silently, granting them access. Inside, they moved swiftly through the corridors, their enhanced senses alert for any sign of their targets. They reached the first suspect's workstation, finding it empty. Something's wrong, Holmes Mira whispered, their merged instincts screaming a warning. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. Emergency bulkheads slammed down, sealing off sections of the building. It's a trap, Harper shouted, drawing his weapon. They knew we were coming. Holmes Mira's form shimmered, adapting to the new threat. The civilians in the facility are trapped. Harper, Lyra, focus on evacuation. I'll pursue the sleeper agent. Without waiting for a response, Holmes' Mira sprinted down the corridor, their hybrid physiology allowing them to move at incredible speeds. They could sense the sleeper agent ahead, the ascendancy modifications creating a unique energy signature. The chase led them deeper into the facility, through a maze of corridors and maintenance tunnels. Holmes' Mira's merged consciousness allowed them to navigate the complex layout effortlessly, slowly gaining on their quarry. They burst into the main reactor room, the massive energy core pulsing with almost unchecked power. The sleeper agent stood before the control panel, their hands moving rapidly over the interface. "Step away from the controls," Holmes' Mira commanded, their voice resonating with authority. The agent turned, revealing features twisted by advanced genetic modifications. "You're too late," they snarled, their voice distorted. "The ascendancy will rise, and this pathetic alliance will fall." The agent lunged forward with inhuman speed, their fist aimed at Holmes' Mira's head. The hybrid entity reacted instinctively, their merged reflexes allowing them to dodge the attack with millimeters to spare. Holmes' Mira countered with a series of rapid strikes, targeting weak points in the agent's enhanced physiology. The two engaged in a furious close-quarters battle, their movements so fast they blurred to the naked eye. As they fought, warning klaxons blared from the reactor control panel. Holmes' Mira's merged consciousness processed the information in a split second. The cooling systems were failing, pushing the reactor toward a catastrophic meltdown. They needed to subdue the agent and stabilize the reactor, all while maintaining their own hybrid form under the stress of combat. Drawing on Captain Holmes's technical expertise and Queen Mira's energy manipulation abilities, they formulated a desperate plan. Holmes' Mira feinted left, then dropped low, sweeping the agent's legs out from under them. As the agent fell, they surged forward, pinning them to the ground with one hand while reaching out to the reactor controls with the other. Their fingers danced over the interface, initiating emergency protocols while simultaneously channeling their own hybrid energy into the system. The reactor core pulsed erratically, but slowly began to stabilize. The sleeper agent struggled beneath them, unleashing a barrage of enhanced attacks. Holmes' Mira gritted their teeth, fighting to maintain their focus on both the reactor and the combat. "You can't win," the agent spat, blood trickling from their mouth. "We are everywhere. The alliance will crumble from within." Holmes' Mira didn't respond, pouring all their concentration into subduing the agent and preventing a meltdown. Seconds stretched into minutes as they pushed their hybrid physiology to its limits. Finally, the reactor's energy signature stabilized, the cooling systems coming back online. Holmes' Mira let out a breath they didn't realize they'd been holding, their merged form trembling slightly from the exertion. They looked down at the now unconscious agent, a mixture of relief and concern washing over them. They had succeeded in neutralizing one threat, but they knew this was only the beginning. Activating their comm link, Holmes' Mira contacted Harper and Lyra. "Target subdued and reactor stabilized. What's your status?" Harper's voice came through, tense but controlled. "Civilians evacuated, but we've got problems. The other sleeper agents have gone active. They're launching some kind of coordinated cyber attack across the city." Holmes' Mira's eyes narrowed, their hybrid mind already processing the implications. "Understood. I'm on my way to your position. We need to regroup and formulate a new strategy." As they secured the unconscious agent and prepared to move out, Holmes' Mira couldn't shake the feeling that this mission had just become far more complicated than any of them had anticipated. The true test of their merged abilities was yet to come, and the fate of Nexus Prime, and perhaps the entire alliance, hung in the balance. Balance hung in the balance. Holmes' Mira's vision blurred, their merged consciousness struggling to process the overwhelming influx of data from the citywide cyber attack. They staggered, catching themselves against the reactor's control panel. "Holmes' Mira, do you copy?" Harper's voice crackled through the comm, permeated with concern. We're here," they managed, fighting to maintain cohesion. "En route to your position." But as they took a step forward, their world tilted. The strain of the battle, the reactor stabilization, and now the ongoing cyber assault proved too much for their hybrid physiology. Holmes' Mira collapsed, their form flickering between human and Akamarian features. "Medical emergency," Lyra's voice echoed through the comm. Holmes' Mira is down. We need immediate extraction. Within minutes, a stealth shuttle touched down outside the power facility. A team of medics rushed in, led by Dr. Ilara, the Alliance's foremost expert on hybrid physiology. Stabilize them for transport, Dr. Ilara ordered, her eyes scanning the readouts on her handheld device. We need to get them to the secure medical facility on Novus Prime Stat. As the medical team worked to secure Holmes' Mira, Harper and Lyra convened with Admiral Zhao via holographic link. The situation has escalated beyond our initial assessment, Zhao said, his holographic form flickering with static. We've detected a massive energy signature beneath the city's central administrative complex. Intelligence suggests it's an underground bunker, likely the sleeper agent's command center. Harper nodded, his eyebrows furrowed. We'll lead the assault, Admiral, but we'll need backup. Already en route, Zhao replied. I'm deploying our hybrid strike teams to support you. They'll rendezvous at your location in 10 minutes. As Holmes' Mira was rushed to the waiting shuttle, Lyra turned to Harper. They'll make it, she said, her voice steady despite the worry in her eyes. We have a job to do. Harper nodded, checking his weapon. Let's end this. The hybrid strike teams arrived as promised, their enhanced abilities evident in their fluid movements and alert postures. Harper quickly briefed them on the situation, outlining their approach to the underground bunker. We'll breach the entrance here, he said, pointing to a holographic map of the complex. Expect heavy resistance and advanced security measures. Our priority is to neutralize the sleeper agents and secure any intelligence on their operations. The team moved out, their stealth gear allowing them to navigate the city's chaotic streets undetected. As they approached the administrative complex, Lyra's Acamarian senses picked up unusual energy readings. The entrance is shielded, she whispered to Harper. Standard breaching methods won't work. Harper frowned, studying the reinforced doors. Then we'll have to get creative. He signaled to two of the hybrid operatives, gesturing toward the shield generators. The operatives nodded, their hands beginning to glow with concentrated energy. In a coordinated strike, they unleashed a burst of power that overloaded the generators, causing the shield to flicker and die. Now, Harper shouted. The strike team surged forward, breaching the entrance with a combination of conventional explosives and hybrid abilities. As they poured into the bunker, they were met with a barrage of automated fire from defense turrets. Lyra leapt into action, her Acamarian agility allowing her to dodge the incoming fire while returning volleys of energy blasts. Harper coordinated the team's movements, his tactical mind processing the layout of the bunker and directing their advance. They encountered their first major obstacle at a sealed bulkhead, its surface covered in a complex array of bioscanners and genetic locks. This is beyond anything we've seen before, one of the hybrid operatives said, studying the lock. It's keyed to specific ascendancy genetic markers. Harper turned to Lyra. Can you interface with it? Use your hybrid physiology to trick the system? Lyra nodded, stepping forward. She placed her hand on the scanner, concentrating as she allowed her genetic structure to subtly shift. For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then, with a hiss of releasing pressure, the bulkhead began to slide open. Nice work, Harper said, leading the team through the opening. Stay alert. We're likely to encounter more of these as we go deeper. As they progressed through the bunker, they discovered evidence of the Ascendancy's far-reaching plans. Holographic displays showed tactical overlays of multiple Alliance worlds, each marked with potential targets and sleeper cell locations. This is bigger than we thought, Harper muttered, quickly copying the data to a secure drive. They were planning a coordinated strike across the entire Alliance. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. A voice, cold and clinical, echoed through hidden speakers. Intruders detected. Initiating containment protocols. The team found themselves trapped as emergency bulkheads slammed shut around them. Noxious gas began to seep into the chamber from hidden vents. Masks on, Harper ordered, his voice muffled as he secured his own breathing apparatus. Lyra, can you find us a way out? Lyra's eyes glowed as she scanned the surrounding structure. There's a maintenance shaft 2 meters to our left. It should lead us to the central chamber. With their hybrid strength, the team managed to pry open an access panel, squeezing into the narrow shaft just as the gas reached dangerous levels. They crawled through the cramped space, the sounds of the facility's security systems growing louder as they approached the heart of the bunker. As they emerged into a vast circular room filled with advanced technology, they came face to face with their quarry. Dr. Venna, the third sleeper agent, stood before a massive holographic display, her features twisted into a sneer. "You're too late," she said, her voice filled with contempt. "The next phase of our plan is already in motion. The ascendancy will rise, and your pathetic alliance will crumble before our genetic superiority." Harper raised his weapon. "Step away from the console, Doctor. It's over." Dr. Venna laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. We are the future of evolution itself." Her hand moved to a panel on her wrist, and before anyone could react, she pressed a sequence of buttons. Red warning lights began to flash throughout the chamber. "Self-destruct sequence initiated," an automated voice announced. 5 minutes to complete system purge." "No!" Harper shouted, but Dr. Venna was already moving, fleeing through a hidden exit that sealed behind her. "We need to secure that data," Lyra said, rushing to the main console. "It could be our only chance to stop their plan." As Lyra worked to download the Ascendancy's files, Harper coordinated with the strike team to search for any other vital intelligence. The countdown continued, each second bringing them closer to destruction. "Download complete," Lyra announced just as the facility began to shake. "We need to move now." The team raced back through the bunker, using their hybrid abilities to bypass the security measures that had slowed their initial ingress. They burst out of the entrance just as the first explosions began to rock the underground structure. As they watched the administrative complex collapse in on itself, burying the bunker and any remaining evidence of the Ascendancy's operations, Harper's comm unit crackled to life. "Lieutenant Harper, this is Admiral Zhao. Report your status." Harper took a deep breath, looking at the data drive in Lyra's hand. "Mission accomplished, Admiral. We've secured vital intelligence on the Ascendancy's operations. But, sir, this is bigger than we ever imagined. They have sleeper cells across the entire Alliance, ready to strike." There was a moment of silence before Zhao responded. "Understood, Lieutenant. Return to base immediately. We need to analyze that data and mobilize our forces. The real war is just beginning." As Harper, Lyra, and the strike team boarded their extraction shuttle, they couldn't shake the feeling that they had only scratched the surface of the Ascendancy's true plans. The battle for Nexus Prime was won, but the conflict that loomed on the horizon promised to test the Alliance in their own hybrid abilities to their very limits. Limits. The battle for Nexus Prime was won, but the conflict that loomed on the horizon promised to test the Alliance in their own hybrid abilities to their very core. Months of intense preparation followed as the Alliance mobilized its forces, analyzing the intelligence gathered from the Ascendancy bunker and fortifying key strategic positions across known space. Holmes Mira, fully recovered from their earlier collapse, stood on the bridge of the Alliance flagship alongside Admiral Zhao, Lieutenant Harper, and Lyra. The view screen before them displayed a vast star field at the edge of charted territory. "All ships report ready, Admiral," the tactical officer announced, his voice tense with anticipation. Zhao nodded, his eyes fixed on the empty space ahead. "Initiate jump sequence. May fortune favor the bold." The fleet surged forward, reality warping around them as they entered hyperspace. Seconds stretched into minutes, the crew holding their breath as they hurtled towards their destiny. Suddenly, they emerged back into normal space, and the sight that greeted them sent a collective gasp through the bridge. Before them loomed the Ascendancy Armada, a vast sea of ships arranged in a complex, three-dimensional formation that seemed to defy conventional tactics. At its center, dwarfing even the largest Alliance cruisers, was the Genetic Overlord's flagship, a behemoth that pulsed with an otherworldly energy. "By the star," Harper muttered, his eyes wide. Admiral Zhao wasted no time. "Deploy fighter squadrons, capital ships, form up in assault formation delta. Prepare to engage on my mark." As the Alliance fleet sprang into action, Holmes Mira turned to their team. "It's time. Let's move." They made their way to the hangar bay, where a specially modified stealth shuttle awaited them. Lieutenant Vex, a recent addition to their team and a newly hybridized operative, was already aboard, running final system checks. Cloaking technology is online, Vex reported as they entered. Derived from your adaptive camouflage abilities, Holmes Mira, it should get us past their sensors. The team strapped in as the shuttle detached from the flagship, immediately engaging its cloaking systems. The space around them erupted into chaos as the two fleets clashed, energy weapons and missiles crisscrossing the void. Holmes Mira's enhanced senses went into overdrive, detecting minute fluctuations in the enemy's sensor coverage. Adjust course 3 degrees port, they instructed the pilot. There's a gap in their patrol pattern. The shuttle weaved through the debris field, narrowly avoiding stray weapons fire and the hulks of destroyed ships. As they approached the genetic overlord's flagship, Vex pointed out a small, rarely used maintenance airlock. There, he said, it's our best shot at getting inside undetected. With practiced precision, the pilot maneuvered the shuttle into position. The team donned their specialized combat suits designed to complement their hybrid abilities. Remember the plan, Holmes Mira said as they prepared to breach the airlock. Vex and I will head for the Central Genetic Laboratory. Harper, Lyra, you're on sabotage duty in engineering. Stay in contact, and may your genetics serve you well. The airlock cycled open, and they slipped inside the massive ship. The corridors were a maze of twisting, biomechanical architecture, pulsing with an unsettling organic quality. They moved silently, using their hybrid abilities to avoid detection by the ship's internal sensors. At a junction, the team split up. Holmes, Mira, and Vex headed deeper into the ship's core, while Harper and Lyra made their way towards the engineering section. As Holmes, Mira, and Vex progressed, they encountered increasing resistance. Ascendancy hybrids, more advanced than any they'd faced before, patrolled the corridors. In one tense encounter, Holmes Mira's body shifted and adapted mid-combat, their limbs elongating to grapple with an enemy, while Vex used his insider knowledge to exploit a weakness in the hybrid's armor. Meanwhile, Harper and Lyra reached the engineering section, facing off against a contingent of Ascendancy technicians and security forces. In the confined space, their hybrid abilities gave them a crucial edge. Lyra's Akamarian agility allowed her to dance between energy blasts, while Harper's enhanced strength sent enemies flying with each blow. The main power core, Harper said, gesturing to a massive pulsating structure at the center of the chamber. If we can overload it, we might be able to cripple the entire ship. Lyra nodded, her hands already moving over the alien controls. Cover me. This might take a minute. Back in the heart of the ship, Holmes, Mira, and Vex finally reached the Central Genetic Laboratory. The massive chamber was filled with bubbling vats of genetic material and complex equipment that hummed with barely held back power. And there, at the center of it all, stood the genetic overlord. The overlord was a sight that defied description, a towering figure of constantly shifting form, one moment humanoid, the next a writhing mass of tentacles and alien appendages. Its voice, when it spoke, seemed to come from everywhere at once. Ah, the abominations return, it said, its tone a mixture of contempt and curiosity. Have you come to witness the birth of a new era? Holmes Mira stepped forward, their own form beginning to shift in response to the Overlord's presence. We've come to end this madness. The Overlord laughed, a sound that sent shivers through the very structure of the ship. You cannot stop evolution itself. Our fleet stands ready to seed 1,000 worlds with the next generation of hybrids. The galaxy will be reborn in our image. With those words, the Overlord attacked. Its body exploded into a whirlwind of slashing limbs and corrosive fluids. Holmes Mira met the assault head-on, their own forms separating and remerging in a dizzying display of hybrid ability. Vex, momentarily overwhelmed by the scale of the conflict, rallied quickly. He focused his newly acquired abilities on supporting Holmes Mira, using his knowledge of Ascendancy technology to interface with the lab's systems and disrupt the Overlord's connection to the ship. As the battle raged, the entire vessel shuddered. In engineering, Harper and Lyra had succeeded in overloading the main power core. Systems across the ship began to fail, and the Ascendancy fleet's coordinated movements faltered. Admiral Zhao, seeing the opening, ordered a concentrated assault on the weakened sections of the enemy formation. "Push the advantage," he commanded. "Don't let up." In the genetic laboratory, Holmes Mira managed to access the central database during a momentary lull in the Overlord's assault. The information that flowed into their hybrid mind was staggering. The full scope of the Ascendancy's plans, the intricacies of their hybridization process, and most importantly, its limitations. "Vex," Holmes Mira called out. "I found it, the key to their entire operation." But before they could elaborate, the genetic overlord, its form now a roiling mass of protoplasm, lunged at Holmes Mira. "You will not deny us our destiny," it roared. As they collided, something unexpected happened. The overlord, in a last high-stakes endeavor, attempted to merge with Holmes Mira, seeking to absorb their unique hybrid physiology. The resulting reaction was catastrophic, triggering a cascade of genetic instabilities throughout the overlord's form. Holmes Mira, recognizing the opportunity, pushed their hybrid abilities to the extreme. They focused on the instabilities, using them to break down the overlord's genetic structure from within. The process was agonizing, threatening to unravel Holmes Mira's own merged form. Vex, seeing his teammate in distress, acted quickly. He channeled his newly acquired hybrid abilities, creating a stabilizing field around Holmes Mira, while simultaneously containing the genetic breakdown of the overlord. The laboratory filled with a blinding light as the genetic overlord's form began to disintegrate. Holmes Mira, their body racked with pain but their mind clear, managed to secure the critical genetic data they had uncovered. "We need to move," Vex said urgently, supporting the weakened Holmes Mira. "This whole ship is coming apart." They staggered out of the laboratory, making their way back towards the maintenance airlock. As they progressed, they received a transmission from Harper and Lyra, who had fought their way through waves of increasingly desperate Ascendancy forces. "We're at the rendezvous point," Harper's voice crackled through their comms. "Where are you?" "On our way," Holmes Mira managed, their voice strained. "We have what we came for." As they neared the airlock, the ship's corridors filled with the sounds of twisting metal and failing systems. The genetic overlord's flagship, like its master, was coming apart at the seams. The team regrouped at the maintenance airlock, battered but alive. As they prepared to board their shuttle and escape the disintegrating vessel, a transmission came through from Admiral Zhao. "Infiltration team, report status." Zhao's voice was tense but hopeful. Holmes Mira, leaning heavily on Vex for support, responded, "Mission accomplished, Admiral. We have the data, and the genetic overlord has been neutralized." There was a moment of silence before Zhao replied, his voice filled with a mixture of relief and persistence. "Excellent work. The Ascendancy fleet is in disarray. Return to the flagship immediately. We're about to launch our final assault." As the team boarded their shuttle, they could see through the viewports that the tide of the battle had indeed turned. The once mighty Ascendancy armada was now scattered, its ships fighting individually without the coordinating influence of their flagship. The shuttle detached from the dying Leviathan, cloaking systems engaged as they navigated the chaos of the ongoing battle. Holmes Mira, despite their exhaustion, felt a glimmer of hope. They had struck a decisive blow against the Ascendancy, but the war was not nearly finished. As they approached the Alliance flagship, Holmes Mira knew that the real work, understanding and countering the Ascendancy's hybrid technology, was just beginning. The shuttle bay doors of the flagship opened to receive them, and as they touched down, Holmes Mira could feel the ship thrumming with energy, preparing for the next phase of the battle. The future of the cosmos hung in the balance, and the actions they took in the coming hours would determine the course of history for generations to come. The future of the cosmos hung in the balance, and the actions they took in the coming hours would determine the course of history for generations to come. As the shuttle bay doors sealed behind them, the team sprang into action. Holmes Mira, still leaning heavily on Vex, tapped into the ship's communication system. "Admiral Zhao, initiating data transfer now," they said, their voice strained but determined. "Transmitting all retrieved genetic information from the Overlord's laboratory." The ship's computer chirped in confirmation as terabytes of invaluable data streamed to the command center. Holmes Mira allowed themselves a moment of relief, knowing that even if their shuttle hadn't made it, the fruits of their mission would have survived. But there was no time to rest. As soon as their feet touched the deck, medical personnel swarmed around them, with Dr. Alara at the forefront. "Holmes, Mira, your biosigns are wildly unstable," she said, her eyes darting over a handheld scanner. "We need to get you to the medbay immediately." The world tilted and swam around Holmes' Mira as they were rushed through the corridors. Their merged form felt like it was unraveling, cells vibrating at impossible frequencies. They caught glimpses of concerned faces, Harper, Lyra, Vex, before the stark white of the medical bay engulfed them. "Prepare for emergency stabilization," Dr. Alara barked to her team. "Start synthesizing the compound based on Holmes' Mira's specialized cells. We'll need to combine it with targeted genetic therapy." As the medical team worked feverishly, Admiral Zhao's voice rang out over the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, prepare for final assault. The enemy flagship has been neutralized, but pockets of resistance remain. We will not let this opportunity slip through our fingers." The flagship shuddered as it maneuvered into position. Through the haze of pain and cellular instability, Holmes' Mira could sense the ship's energy weapons powering up, preparing to deliver the killing blow to the scattered Ascendancy forces. In the command center, Admiral Zhao surveyed the tactical display. The once mighty Ascendancy armada was now a disorganized mess, ships firing wildly or attempting to flee. "Target the largest remaining clusters," Zhao ordered. "Cripple their engines if possible. We'll want prisoners for interrogation." As Alliance ships moved with practiced precision to neutralize the remaining threats, Dr. Bennett and his team of scientists huddled over consoles, poring over the newly acquired genetic data. "This is incredible," Bennett muttered, his eyes wide. "The complexity of their hybridization process, these adaptive markers, it's like nothing we've ever seen." Back in the medbay, Holmes' Mira's body convulsed as Dr. Ilera administered the specialized treatment. The merged cells of their hybrid form seemed to war with each other, threatening to tear them apart at the molecular level. "Stay with us," Dr. Alara urged, adjusting the flow of the synthetic compound. "Your hybrid physiology is evolving rapidly. We need to stabilize it before the changes become irreversible." Lieutenant Vex paced outside the medbay, his own newly acquired hybrid abilities sensing the turmoil within Holmes' Mira. Making a decision, he approached one of the attending physicians. "Doctor, I'd like to volunteer for genetic analysis," Vex said. "My hybridization process was unique. If it can help Holmes' Mira or further our understanding, I'm willing to undergo whatever tests you need." The physician nodded gratefully, immediately ushering Vex to a nearby examination room. Hours passed as the Alliance fleet methodically eliminated the last vestiges of Ascendancy resistance. Admiral Zhao stood stoically on the bridge, watching as enemy ships were disabled or destroyed. It was a decisive victory, but he knew the war was nowhere near the end. "Sir," a communications officer called out, "we're receiving reports from multiple sectors. Sleeper agents are activating on several Alliance worlds." Zhao's eyes narrowed. "Desperate last-ditch efforts. They don't know their leadership has fallen." He turned to his second-in-command. "Mobilize our hybrid strike teams. Send Harper and Lyra to coordinate the response. We need to contain this quickly." As the Alliance began the arduous process of securing former Ascendancy territories and neutralizing hidden threats, Dr. Alera finally emerged from the medbay, exhaustion etched on her face. "Holmes' Mira is stable," she reported to the anxiously waiting team members. "But the battle with the Overlord has fundamentally altered their physiology. The adaptive capabilities of their hybrid form have been pushed to new limits. We're still not sure of the full implications." In the med bay, Holmes' Mira lay motionless, their body occasionally shimmering with barely perceptible changes. Monitors beeped steadily, tracking cellular activity that defied conventional medical understanding. Days passed as the immediate aftermath of the battle unfolded. Alliance leaders grappled with the political ramifications of their victory, while scientists worked tirelessly to unlock the secrets of the Ascendancy's genetic technologies. When Holmes' Mira finally regained full consciousness, they found their senses sharper, their ability to adapt even more pronounced. As they sat up in the med bay, their form rippled, responding to the subtle changes in air pressure and temperature. Dr. Alera approached, her expression a mix of fascination and concern. "How do you feel?" she asked. Holmes Mira took a moment to assess their new state of being. "Different," they replied, their voice resonating with a new timbre. "Evolved, but also uncertain." As Holmes Mira began the process of understanding their transformed hybrid nature, Admiral Zhao entered the medbay, his presence commanding attention. "I'm glad to see you recovering," Zhao said, his tone sincere but tinged with urgency. "We've made significant progress, but there's still work to be done. We've detected unusual energy signatures in the outer rim. They may be hidden ascendancy facilities." Holmes Mira nodded, already sensing where this was leading. Zhao continued, "We're assembling a specialized team for a cleanup operation. Given your unique abilities and first-hand experience with ascendancy technology, you're the ideal candidate to lead this mission." As Holmes Mira considered the Admiral's words, they felt their bodies subtly shifting, cells preparing for new challenges ahead. The war might be won, but the battle for the future of the galaxy, and for their own identity, was only just beginning. The future of the cosmos hung in the balance, and the actions they took in the coming hours would determine the course of history for generations to come. As Holmes Mira recovered, Admiral Zhao wasted no time in putting their unique abilities to use. Within days of their release from the medbay, Holmes Mira found themselves briefed on a critical mission to Xerxes 7, a remote planet harboring a hidden ascendancy outpost. "Our intelligence suggests this facility contains advanced genetic research data," Zhao explained, his holographic image flickering slightly in the briefing room. "If left uncovered, it could pose a significant threat to our hard-won peace." Holmes Mira nodded, their forms subtly shifting as they processed the information. "Understood, Admiral. When do we depart?" "Immediately," Zhao replied. "Your team is prepped and ready. Good luck and stay alert. We don't know what you'll find out there." The journey to Xerxes 7 was tense, with Holmes Mira's specialized team reviewing mission parameters and running equipment checks. As they entered the planet's atmosphere, the ship's sensors blared warnings. "Corrosive gases detected," the pilot announced, her voice tight with concentration. "Levels far exceed our initial estimates." Holmes Mira's body rippled, already beginning to adapt. "Acknowledged. Everyone, double-check your protective gear. We can't afford any mistakes down there." The landing was rough, the ship buffeted by harsh winds laden with caustic particles. As the team disembarked, the full force of Xerxes 7's hostile environment hit them. Visibility was low, the air a swirling maelstrom of toxic yellow-green gases. Holmes Mira took point, their enhanced senses cutting through the chaos. "This way," they called, guiding the team across treacherous terrain. Rocks crumbled underfoot, dissolving into caustic sludge that ate through standard-issue boots. "How are you not affected?" one of the team members asked, voice strained through their respirator. Holmes Mira's form wavered, temporarily taking on a more crystalline structure. "I'm adapting in real time. The environment is challenging but manageable." They pressed on, Holmes Mira's unique physiology, allowing them to navigate past hidden pitfalls and areas of intensified corrosion. Hours passed as they trekked across the blasted landscape, until finally they spotted their objective. "There," Holmes Mira pointed. What appeared to be a natural rock formation stood before them, its surface oddly unmarred by the caustic atmosphere. "The facility's entrance is hidden within." Approaching the structure, Holmes Mira placed their hand against the rough surface. Their palms shifted, mimicking the rock's texture and composition. With a low hum, a previously invisible seam appeared, and a door slid open. "Genetic lock," Holmes Mira explained. "Standard ascendancy security. Let's move." Inside, the air was mercifully clear. The team removed their protective gear, breathing sighs of relief. Holmes Mira, however, remained alert. "Recent activity," they murmured, gesturing to faint scuff marks on the floor. "Stay sharp." They moved deeper into the facility, bypassing further security measures with Holmes Mira's hybrid abilities. The central laboratory, when they reached it, was a treasure trove of advanced technology and data storage units. "Begin the transfer," Holmes Mira ordered, interfacing directly with the main computer. As data streamed into their secured devices, their eyes widened. "This goes beyond anything we've seen before. They were working on ecosystem-scale genetic manipulation. Suddenly, alarms blared. Red lights flashed and sealed doors began to close around them. "It's a trap!" one of the team shouted. Holmes Mira's mind raced, analyzing the situation. The data transfer triggered a failsafe. Mutagenic gases will flood the room in seconds. Gear on now! As the team scrambled to don their protective equipment, Holmes Mira made a split-second decision. Their bodies shimmered, and then, to the amazement of their team, separated into two distinct entities. "What the?" one of the soldiers gasped. "No time to explain." Both Holmes Mira entities spoke in unison. "One of me will override the security systems. The other will clear our escape route. Follow my lead." What followed was a harrowing race against time. One Holmes Mira interfaced with the security terminal, fingers flying across holographic displays as they fought against the Ascendancy's programming. The other led the team through rapidly closing blast doors, their body morphing to create temporary barriers against encroaching gas pockets. As they neared the exit, they encountered resistance. A group of Ascendancy scientists, their bodies twisted by their own genetic modifications, attempted to block their path. "Protect the data!" one of the scientists shrieked, hurling himself at the team. Holmes Mira's two halves reunited, their merged form pulsing with energy. They moved with inhuman speed, countering the scientists' enhanced abilities with rapid adaptations of their own. Bones hardened to deflect blows, skin became rubbery to absorb impacts, muscles densified for increased strength. In the chaos of the fight, two of the Ascendancy personnel were subdued and restrained. "Bring them," Holmes Mira ordered. "Command will want to question them." With alarms still blaring and the facility's systems going haywire, the team fought their way back to the surface. The corrosive atmosphere seemed even more intense than before, eating through their protective gear at an alarming rate. "Move!" Holmes Mira shouted, their body expanding to create a protective barrier around the team. "The ship's just ahead." They stumbled up the ramp, the last team member barely clearing the airlock before it slammed shut. As the ship lifted off, punching through the turbulent atmosphere, Holmes Mira's form began to waver and distort. "Holmes Mira." Dr. Samantha Reeves, the team's medic, rushed to their side. "Your cellular structure is destabilizing. We need to get you into stasis, now." As the ship broke orbit, Holmes Mira's world faded to black, their last conscious thought a mix of triumph and uncertainty. They had secured the data and captured Ascendancy personnel, but at what cost to their own evolving physiology? The ship raced towards the nearest Alliance medical facility, carrying its precious cargo of intelligence, prisoners, and one unconscious hybrid whose very genetic makeup was rewriting itself with each passing moment. Back on the Alliance flagship, Admiral Zhao received the initial report, his face grim as he contemplated the challenges that lay ahead. The Admiral's brow furrowed as he contemplated the challenges that lay before them. Back at the Alliance medical facility, a team of specialists worked tirelessly to stabilize Holmes Mira's condition. Dr. Alara, her face etched with concern, monitored the fluctuating vital signs on the holographic display above the stasis pod. "Their cellular structure is in a state of constant flux," she reported to the assembled medical team. "We need to find a way to stabilize it before—" A sudden spike in neural activity cut her off. Holmes Mira's eyes snapped open, their body convulsing as it cycled through a rapid series of transformations. "Quick, administer the stabilizing agent," Dr. Alara shouted, rushing to the stasis pod. As the medical team fought to control Holmes Mira's condition, Admiral Zhao convened an emergency meeting of the Alliance leadership. The vast conference room buzzed with tension as military officers, scientific advisors, and political representatives took their seats. "Ladies and gentlemen," Zhao began, his voice grave, "the data recovered from Xerxes 7 has revealed the full extent of the Ascendancy's genetic research program. Dr. Bennett, if you would." Dr. Bennett, her holographic image flickering to life at the center of the room, launched into a detailed presentation. The Ascendancy was working on technology capable of manipulating entire ecosystems on a genetic level. The potential applications are staggering. As the implications sank in, the room erupted into heated debate. General Kharkov, his cybernetic eye glowing an angry red, pounded his fist on the table. This technology could be weaponized to devastating effect. We must destroy all traces of it. Ambassador Lyrael of the Thalassian Confederacy raised a delicate hand, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with agitation. But consider the potential benefits. We could terraform barren worlds, end famines, or create them, interrupted Admiral Zhao, silencing the room. This technology is too dangerous to simply destroy, but too volatile to implement without thorough study. I propose we establish a top-secret research initiative to explore its applications under strict oversight. As the Alliance leadership grappled with the ethical implications of the Ascendancy's research, Lieutenant Vex led a covert team to Theros Prime. The dense, poisonous jungle pressed in around them as they made their way through the undergrowth. Vex's newly enhanced senses tingled, alerting him to hidden dangers. "Watch your step," he warned, his voice barely above a whisper. "The plants here are carnivorous." They pressed on, Vex's hybrid abilities allowing him to navigate the treacherous terrain with unnatural ease. After hours of grueling progress, they reached a clearing where an innocuous rock formation stood. Vex approached, his hand transforming to match the rock's composition. With a soft click, a hidden door slid open, revealing the entrance to the Ascendancy outpost. Inside, they discovered a nightmarish laboratory filled with hybridization chambers. Grotesque forms floated in viscous fluids, half-formed creatures designed to rapidly alter planetary environments. "By the void," one of Vex's team members breathed, her face pale beneath her protective mask. Vex moved swiftly, interfacing with the facility's computer systems. "Downloading research data now. Sever, prep the charges. We're not leaving any of this intact." As Vex secured the last of the data and samples, alarms blared throughout the facility. "Intruder alert," an emotionless voice announced. "Hybridization chambers disengaging." "Move!" Vex shouted, ushering his team toward the exit as the monstrous creations began to stir in their tanks. They raced through the jungle, the sounds of pursuit growing closer. Vex's body rippled, taking on characteristics of the local flora to blend in with their surroundings. "Keep going," he urged his team. "I'll hold them off." Back at the Alliance Medical Center, Holmes Mira finally regained full consciousness. They sat up slowly, their forms shimmering as it adjusted to the environment. Dr. Ilara approached cautiously. "How do you feel?" Holmes Mira flexed their hands, watching as the skin rippled and changed texture. "Different. More fluid." They looked up at Dr. Ilara, their eyes shifting color. "What's happened to me?" Before Dr. Ilara could respond, a priority communication came through. Admiral Zhao's holographic image appeared, his expression tense. "Holmes, Mira, I'm glad to see you're awake. We have a situation developing, and we need your unique abilities." As Admiral Zhao briefed them on the intelligence gathered from Omega-9 and the potential threat it posed, Holmes Mira felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Their new powers offered unprecedented opportunities, but at what cost? "I understand the risks, Admiral," Holmes Mira said, their voice resonating with newfound depth. "When do we leave for Omega-9? Dr. Ilara interjected, her concern evident. "Holmes Mira, your condition is still highly unstable. We don't know the long-term effects of these changes on your physiology." Holmes Mira stood, their forms shifting subtly to adapt to the room's temperature and gravity. "We don't have the luxury of time, Doctor. The fate of the Alliance hangs in the balance." As preparations for the Omega-9 mission began, Lieutenant Vex's team returned from Theros Prime, bringing with them crucial data and disturbing news. The Alliance now faced a race against time, with Holmes Mira's evolving abilities at the center of their strategy. The hybrids stepped onto the bridge of the stealth ship that would take them to Omega-9, their body rippling with anticipation. As the ship's engines hummed to life, Holmes Mira couldn't shake the feeling that this mission would push them to their absolute limits, and perhaps beyond. Beyond their current understanding. As the ship hurtled through space towards Omega-9, Holmes Mira felt a sudden, searing pain course through their body. They stumbled, catching themselves on a nearby console. "Holmes Mira!" Lieutenant Vex rushed to their side, concern etched on his face. What's wrong? Holmes' Mira's form rippled, their skin shifting between various textures and colors. It's getting worse, they managed through gritted teeth. The instability is accelerating. Dr. Ilara's voice crackled over the comm system. Holmes' Mira, your vital signs are fluctuating wildly. We need to abort the mission and get you back for treatment immediately. But before Holmes' Mira could respond, Admiral Zhao's holographic image appeared on the bridge. His expression was grim as he delivered news that would change the course of their mission. New intelligence has come to light, Zhao announced. We've uncovered plans from an Ascendancy splinter group. Their target isn't Omega-9. It's Novus Terram. Holmes' Mira straightened, their pain momentarily forgotten. The agricultural world? Shadao nodded. Exactly. We believe they're planning to use some form of ecosystem manipulation technology. The potential devastation... He didn't need to finish the thought. Novus Terram was a key food production center for the Alliance. If it fell, millions would suffer. Holmes' Mira exchanged a look with Vex, then turned back to Zhao's image. We're changing course for Novus Terram immediately, Admiral. Holmes' Mira, Dr. Ilara interjected, her voice infused with urgency. Your condition... Can wait, Holmes' Mira finished firmly. This is too important. As the ship altered its trajectory, Holmes' Mira felt another wave of pain wash over them. They pushed it aside, focusing on the mission ahead. Hours later, the stealth ship entered Novus Terram's atmosphere. Rolling fields of golden grain stretched as far as the eye could see, punctuated by clusters of agri-domes and processing facilities. Our intel suggests the Splinter Group is operating out of a farming cooperative near the equator, Vex reported, bringing up a holographic map. We'll need to move fast and quiet. Holmes' Mira nodded, their forms shimmering as they activated their genetic mimicry abilities. Within seconds, they had taken on the appearance of a local agricultural worker. I'll infiltrate the cooperative, they said, their voice now matching the local dialect. Vex, assemble a strike team and stand by for my signal. As Holmes' Mira made their way through the busy corridors of the cooperative, they felt their control slipping. Twice they had to duck into empty rooms as their skin involuntarily shifted, revealing patches of iridescent Acamarian scales before they could regain control. Despite the close calls, Holmes' Mira pressed on. In a secluded section of the facility, they discovered a hidden entrance leading to a vast underground complex. As they descended, the air grew thick with the scent of chemicals and the hum of powerful machinery. At the heart of the complex, Holmes' Mira found what they were looking for, a massive device, its core pulsing with an otherworldly energy. Holographic displays surrounding it showed simulations of rapid planetary transformation. Vex, Holmes' Mira whispered into their comm unit, I've found the terraforming device. It's worse than we thought. If activated, it could render the entire planet uninhabitable within days. Understood, Vex replied. We're moving to evacuate nearby settlements. Can you disable it? Before Holmes' Mira could respond, a voice rang out behind them. I'm afraid that won't be possible. Holmes' Mira spun around to find themselves face to face with a tall, elegant woman with cybernetic enhancements visible along her temples and neck. Dr. Zella, I presume, Holmes' Mira said, recognizing the infamous Ascendancy scientist from intelligence briefings. Zella smiled, her eyes gleaming with a mixture of curiosity and malice. The famous Holmes' Mira. I've been looking forward to meeting you. She gestured to the device behind them. Impressive, isn't it? Soon, Novus Terram will be reborn as a paradise for a new generation of hybrids. At the cost of millions of lives, Holmes' Mira countered, their form rippling as another wave of instability washed over them. Zella's eyes widened with interest. Fascinating. Your genetic structure is even more unstable than our report suggested. She took a step forward. Join us, Holmes' Mira. Together we could perfect this technology, create a new future for both our species. Holmes' Mira's response came in the form of action. They lunged forward, their arm elongating and hardening into a blade-like appendage. Zella barely managed to dodge, activating her own cybernetic enhancements. The laboratory erupted into chaos as Holmes' Mira and Zella engaged in combat. Enhanced guards poured in, forcing Holmes' Mira to push their shape-shifting abilities to the limit. They became a whirlwind of adaptations, growing armor plates to deflect energy blasts, extending multiple limbs to grapple with opponents, even briefly splitting into two entities to outmaneuver their attackers. But each transformation took its toll. Holmes' Mira could feel their genetic structure unraveling, the pain becoming nearly unbearable. Just as they felt their control slipping entirely, an explosion rocked the facility. Vex and the strike team burst in, laying down covering fire. "Holmes' Mira!" Vex shouted over the din of battle. "The device!" Fighting through the pain, Holmes' Mira made their way back to the terraforming controls. Their hands flew over the interface, their hybrid mind processing the complex systems at incredible speed. "No!" Zella cried, realizing what was happening. She rushed towards Holmes' Mira, but Vex intercepted her, engaging the scientist in hand-to-hand combat. As alarms blared and the battle raged around them, Holmes' Mira poured every ounce of their remaining strength and knowledge into reprogramming the device. Their vision blurred, their forms shifting uncontrollably between human, Acamarian, and monstrous hybrid shapes. With a final Herculean effort, Holmes' Mira input the last command sequence. The terraforming device hummed, its energy signature changing. Instead of destroying Novus Terram's ecosystem, it began to enhance it, purifying the atmosphere, enriching the soil, and accelerating crop growth. As the immediate threat subsided, Holmes' Mira collapsed to the ground, their body racked with violent convulsions. Vex, having subdued Zella, rushed to their side. "Medic!" he shouted, cradling Holmes' Mira's constantly shifting form. "We need emergency evac now." The last thing Holmes' Mira saw before losing consciousness was the worried face of Vex and the soft, golden glow of Novus Terram's enhanced wheat fields, visible through a distant window. Hours later, in the sterile confines of the Alliance's primary medical facility, Dr. Ilara stood over Holmes' Mira's stasis pod, her face etched with concern. Admiral Zhao watched from nearby as she initiated the experimental treatment that would determine the fate of their hybrid operative. "Begin electromagnetic pulse sequence," Dr. Ilara commanded, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. As the treatment began, Holmes' Mira's form continued to shift and change within the pod. The outcome remained uncertain, but the events on Novus Terram had proven one thing. The potential of hybrid technology, for good or ill, was greater than anyone had imagined. The future of human-Acamarian relations, and perhaps the galaxy itself, now hinged on what happened in this medical bay. As the electromagnetic pulses worked to stabilize Holmes' Mira's genetics, Admiral Zhao turned his attention to the broader implications of recent events, knowing that difficult decisions and new challenges lay ahead. The electromagnetic pulses coursed through Holmes' Mira's body, their form stabilizing within the stasis pod. As the treatment concluded, Dr. Ilara and Admiral Zhao watched intently, their breath held in anticipation. Slowly, Holmes' Mira's eyes fluttered open. They sat up, their gaze darting around the room before settling on their own hands. With a thought, their skin shifted from human to Acamarian, then back again. "Incredible," Dr. Ilara breathed, rushing to Holmes' Mira's side with a scanner. "How do you feel?" Holmes' Mira flexed their fingers, watching as they elongated and retracted at will. "In control," they replied, their voice a mix of wonder and relief. "For the first time since the fusion, I can direct the changes." Admiral Zhao stepped forward, his expression a mixture of concern and curiosity. "Can you maintain your merged consciousness in different forms?" In response, Holmes' Mira shifted fully into their Acamarian form, then back to human. "Yes," they confirmed. "The essence of who I am remains constant, regardless of my physical appearance." As Holmes' Mira demonstrated their newfound abilities, alarms blared throughout the facility. Admiral Zhao's communicator chirped urgently. "Zhao here," he answered, his brow furrowing as he listened to the report. "Understood. I'm on my way." He turned to Holmes' Mira and Dr. Ilara. "The Alliance leadership is convening an emergency meeting to discuss the Novus Terram mission. Holmes' Mira, if you're feeling up to it, your insights would be invaluable." Holmes' Mira nodded, sliding off the medical bed. "I'm ready, Admiral." In the Alliance's high-security briefing room, holographic displays flickered to life, showing the transformed landscapes of Novus Terram. Lush fields of golden wheat stretched further than ever before, punctuated by thriving agridomes. The reprogrammed terraforming device has exceeded our wildest expectations, a senior agronomist reported. Crop yields have increased by 300%, and soil regeneration is occurring at an unprecedented rate. Admiral Zhao leaned forward, his eyes scanning the data scrolling across his terminal. What are the implications for other worlds? Dr. Bennett, her eyes alight with excitement, stepped into the center of the room. The potential is staggering. We could restore ecosystems damaged by war or natural disasters. Barren worlds could become agricultural powerhouses. She paused, her expression growing serious. There's more. I believe we can adapt this technology for temporary genetic modifications in individuals. A murmur rippled through the assembled leaders. Admiral Zhao raised an eyebrow. Explain. Dr. Bennett brought up a holographic model of human DNA. Imagine being able to grant specific adaptations for extreme environments or specialized tasks. Space exploration, deep-sea operations, even medical treatments could be revolutionized. The room erupted into heated discussion. Holmes Mira watched silently, their own body a testament to the potential and risks of such technology. Admiral Zhao raised a hand, silencing the room. We proceed with caution. Dr. Bennett, you have approval to begin research, but with strict oversight. He turned to Lieutenant Vex, who stood in attention near the door. Lieutenant, in light of your recent performance, you're being promoted. You'll lead a new hybrid task force to track down remaining Ascendancy splinter groups and secure their technology. Vex saluted sharply. Thank you, sir. I won't let you down. As the meeting adjourned, Holmes Mira approached Admiral Zhao. Sir, I'd like to volunteer for a high-risk mission. There's an Ascendancy outpost on Zephyrus IV that needs investigating. Zhao studied Holmes Mira carefully. Are you sure you're ready for fieldwork so soon? Holmes Mira's form shimmered briefly, cycling through various hybrid appearances. More than ready, sir. My new abilities make me uniquely suited for this task. Days later, Holmes Mira found themselves navigating the swirling clouds of Zephyrus IV. Their body had adapted to the gas giant's harsh atmosphere, skin thickened and lungs reconfigured to process the alien gases. Disguised as a hybrid worker, they infiltrated the floating research station. The corridors bustled with activity, various hybrid forms rushing to and fro. Holmes Mira blended seamlessly, their chameleon-like abilities allowing them to mimic the station's inhabitants perfectly. In a secluded data hub, Holmes Mira accessed a terminal, their fingers flying over the holographic interface. Their eyes widened as they uncovered plans for a massive fleet of bioships, vessels capable of traversing the most extreme regions of space. Fascinating discovery, isn't it? A silky voice purred from behind. Holmes Mira spun around, coming face to face with Dr. Sella. The cybernetically enhanced scientist smiled coldly, her eyes glinting with recognition. You, Holmes Mira breathed, their form instinctively shifting to a more combat-ready state. Zella's hand moved to a concealed weapon. I must say, I'm impressed you made it this far, but your little infiltration ends here. Holmes Mira lunged forward, their arm elongating and wrapping around Zella's wrist. The scientist yelped in surprise, her weapon clattering to the floor. You're coming with me, Holmes Mira growled, their voice deepening as their form bulked up. Zella's cybernetic implants crackled with energy. I think not, she snarled, breaking free and sprinting down the corridor. The chase was on. Holmes Mira pursued, their body adapting to the twists and turns of the station. They leapt over railings, squeezed through narrow maintenance shafts, and even briefly took flight in a zero-gravity section. The pursuit led them to a vast hangar where a sleek, organic-looking ship pulsed with life. Zella raced up the boarding ramp, the vessel systems coming online at her approach. Holmes Mira hesitated for a split second, then made a decision. As the bioship detached from its moorings, they launched themselves forward, morphing their hands into grappling hooks that latched onto the hull. The ship plunged into Zephyrus IV's roiling atmosphere, Holmes Mira clinging to its exterior. Inside, alarms blared as Zella realized she had an unwelcome passenger. With a grunt of effort, Holmes' Mira forced their way inside, their body adapting to interface with the ship's organic controls. They felt a surge of connection, the vessel responding to their hybrid physiology in ways it never could with Zella. As they wrestled for control, the bioship tumbled through layers of turbulent gases. Holmes' Mira's mind raced, processing the ship's capabilities and the treacherous environment simultaneously. "It's over, Zella," they called out, their voice resonating through the ship's internal systems. "Surrender now." The scientist's laughter echoed back. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, Holmes' Mira. This ship is the key to ascendancy dominance." Holmes' Mira's hands sank into the control interface, merging with the bioship's nervous system. They felt the vessel's every sensation, from the buffeting winds to the increasing pressure of Zephyrus IV's deeper atmosphere. With a thought, they stabilized their descent, pulling out of the dangerous dive. The ship responded eagerly to their commands, as if recognizing a kindred hybrid spirit. "Alliance Fleet, this is Holmes' Mira," they transmitted, their voice steady despite the ongoing struggle with Zella. "I've secured a prototype Ascendancy bioship and have Dr. Zella in custody, requesting immediate extraction from Zephyrus IV's atmosphere." As they awaited a response, Holmes' Mira marveled at the bioship's capabilities. It moved through the gas giant storms with unprecedented agility, adapting to each new layer of the atmosphere. "Hold tight, Holmes' Mira," Lieutenant Vex's voice crackled over the comm. "We're on our way with a specialized retrieval team. Can you make it to the upper atmosphere?" Holmes' Mira's lips curved into a smile as they felt the bioship's eagerness to push its limits. "Affirmative, Lieutenant. You won't believe what this ship can do." As they ascended through Zephyrus IV's swirling clouds, Holmes' Mira reflected on the incredible journey that had led them to this moment. From a risky hybridization experiment to piloting an advanced bioship through a gas giant's atmosphere, life had certainly taken an unexpected turn. The retrieval team's ships came into view, their hulls gleaming against the planet's turbulent backdrop. As Holmes' Mira prepared for the mid-air transfer, they knew that this was just the beginning. The captured bioship and the apprehension of Dr. Zella would open new doors for the Alliance, and for their own evolving role in shaping the future of human-Acamarian relations. With a deep breath, Holmes' Mira guided the bioship towards the retrieval team, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the bioship docked with the retrieval team's vessel, Holmes' Mira felt a sense of accomplishment wash over them. The mission had been a success, but it was just the beginning of a much greater journey. Months passed as the Alliance studied the captured bioship and interrogated Dr. Zella. The knowledge gained from these endeavors led to rapid advancements in hybrid technology and interspecies cooperation. Holmes' Mira found themselves at the center of these developments, their unique physiology and experiences proving invaluable to researchers and diplomats alike. As tensions between humans and Acamarians eased, both species began to see the potential benefits of closer collaboration. It was in this atmosphere of growing trust that plans for a historic ceremony on Acamar took shape. The day of the ceremony arrived, and Holmes' Mira stood before the ornate gates of Acamar's Grand Hall. They took a deep breath, feeling the familiar sensation of their body shifting. This time, however, the change was deliberate and controlled. Their forms settled into a harmonious blend of human and Acamarian features, a living symbol of unity between the two species. As they approached the entrance, the assembled crowd of dignitaries fell silent. Humans and Acamarians alike watched in awe as Holmes' Mira ascended the steps to the dais with fluid grace. Their movements were neither entirely human nor Acamarian, but something new and captivating. Queen Mira's family stepped forward, bearing a unique crown. Its intricate design incorporated elements from both cultures, the sleek lines of human craftsmanship intertwined with the organic flowing patterns favored by Acamarians. As the crown was placed upon Holmes' Mira's head, they felt a surge of connection to both aspects of their heritage. Holmes' Mira turned to address the gathering, their voice carrying the gravitas of Captain Holmes and the regal timbre of Queen Mira. "Today marks not an end, but a beginning," they declared. "We stand at the threshold of a new era of cooperation and understanding between our peoples. The crowd listened intently as Holmes Mira spoke of the challenges they had overcome and the opportunities that lay ahead. Their words resonated with both humans and Akamarians, bridging the gap between two vastly different cultures. As the ceremony concluded, Holmes Mira retreated to private quarters with Captain Holmes. In the quiet of the room, they gazed at each other, marveling at the journey that had brought them to this point. "I never imagined this when we first met," Captain Holmes said softly, reaching out to touch Holmes Mira's face. Holmes Mira's form shimmered, their features becoming more human-like. "Nor did I," they replied, their voice a blend of both individuals. "But I wouldn't change it for anything." Their embrace transcended traditional boundaries. Holmes Mira's body shifted and changed, exploring new dimensions of intimacy that neither human nor Akamarian had experienced before. It was a profound connection, both physical and emotional, that defied easy categorization. In the days that followed, news of Holmes Mira's unique status spread throughout Akamarian society. Many were fascinated by the idea of a deeper, more emotional connection between mates. Couples began to experiment with new forms of intimacy, inspired by the human concept of romantic love. This cultural shift sparked a renaissance in Akamarian art and literature. Poets composed verses celebrating the diverse forms of love, while painters and sculptors sought to capture the beauty of interspecies harmony. Music took on new depths of emotion, with composers blending human and Akamarian styles to create hauntingly beautiful hybrid melodies. Meanwhile, Holmes Mira threw themselves into their work with the Alliance's bioship program. They led a series of groundbreaking deep space expeditions, pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible. The bioships, under Holmes Mira's guidance, adapted to extreme environments with ease, opening up new frontiers for exploration. During one such mission, Holmes Mira made a remarkable discovery. Their bioship detected a planet with environmental conditions that seemed too perfect to be true. As they descended through the atmosphere, they realized they had found a world uniquely suited for both humans and Akamarians. Holmes Mira stood on the surface of this new world, their forms shifting subtly to adapt to the environment. They watched as the first group of human and Akamarian colonists disembarked from their ships, their faces filled with wonder and hope. "This is it," Holmes Mira murmured, their voice carrying the weight of the moment. "The beginning of true coexistence." As the colony took shape, Holmes Mira found their influence growing beyond the realm of exploration. They became a sought-after diplomat, their unique ability to understand and adapt to different cultures proving invaluable in negotiations between various species. Their personal life flourished as well. Holmes Mira formed deep connections with both humans and Akamarians, challenging traditional notions of relationships. These bonds were complex and multifaceted, reflecting the intricate nature of Holmes Mira's own existence. On the 10th anniversary of their unification, Holmes Mira stood before an eager audience of scientists, diplomats, and journalists. The anticipation in the room was palpable as they prepared to make their announcement. "We have developed a method," Holmes Mira began, their voice steady and clear, "to safely allow other humans and Akamarians to temporarily experience a merged state similar to our own." The room erupted in excited murmurs. Holmes Mira raised a hand, calling for silence before continuing. "We call it the Empathy Protocol. It has the potential to revolutionize diplomacy and cultural exchange, fostering unprecedented understanding between our species." As the implications of this announcement rippled through the galaxy, Holmes Mira turned their attention to their most ambitious project yet, the Galactic Harmony Institute. This center, dedicated to promoting interspecies cooperation and exploring the frontiers of hybrid technology, would be their lasting legacy. The day of the Institute's opening arrived, and Holmes Mira stood before the entrance, ribbon in hand. Their forms shifted one final time, settling into a perfect balance of human and Akamarian features. As they cut the ribbon, cheers erupted from the diverse crowd of humans, Akamarians, and representatives from other alien species. Holmes Mira smiled, looking out over the gathering. They saw not just two species, but the beginnings of a truly integrated galactic society. Their journey from reluctant breeding partners to the embodiment of interspecies harmony had transformed not just themselves, but the entire galaxy. As the celebration continued into the night, Holmes Mira found a moment of quiet reflection. They thought about the long path that had led them here, the challenges, the discoveries, the moments of connection. It had been a journey beyond anything they could have imagined, and yet they knew it was just the beginning. The stars beckoned, holding new mysteries and opportunities. Holmes Mira gazed up at the night sky, their unique eyes able to perceive spectra invisible to both humans and Acamarians. They saw potential in every pinprick of light, every swirl of cosmic dust. "What's next?" a voice asked from behind them. Holmes Mira turned to see Admiral Zhao, now silver-haired but still sharp-eyed. They smiled, their features shifting slightly as they did so. "The future," Holmes Mira replied, gesturing towards the stars. "It's out there, waiting for us to shape it." As they spoke, a shooting star blazed across the sky, a fitting symbol for the bright future that lay ahead. Holmes Mira watched its arc, knowing that their story, and the story of human-Acamarian relations, was far from finished. New challenges and adventures awaited beyond the horizons of known space.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.